Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод. Слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day. You know what day it is. And also, the Russians are surrendering in Bakmhut. What do you know?
And of course, we're going to be covering the day of days of the news. It is a day indeed, and certainly one that will be considered a part of the war. But beyond that, today has been a fairly significant day as a Russian counterattack on the village of Klishchiivka failed. The Ukrainian police counterattacked the Russian forces in the area and ended up taking prisoners. It is something that has been odd to note because the police of Ukraine are considered a rear-line unit, and nevertheless, they ended up taking on a Russian mechanized brigade in the area, and not only that, taking prisoners. I'm going to be taking you all to that clip immediately because it's just shocking to see. Also, by the way, quick note, We can see the symbol of the Ukrainian National Police up here in the top right corner of the screen, indicating that this is the Ukrainian police unit that has been designated to the Klishchiivka area of the southern battlefield of Bakmut, near to the village. Here's the clip. How many have you got there? 3. They've already got 3 prisoners. It appears that a mortar round landed right on top of their trench. Spear, what's going on the right? On the right is an exit. Something's coming. Here we can see a layout at the moment of the fortifications that the Ukrainians are dealing with, and also the positions of the Russian forces. Here we can see our Ukrainians that are on the body cam that we just saw a moment ago, and up here in the top part of the screen we can see what appears to possibly be a entrance to the dugout over here where there is a Russian soldier, and possibly some kind of a crater shell or a foxhole where there seems to be maybe another Russian soldier a little bit further up. We can see the Ukrainian soldiers advancing into the southern side of the dugout. Did you clear the dugout? Spear, did you clear this hole? Clear the trench. Is it clear? We'll check. Spear, throw a grenade and F off from there. Who are you? Come here. Come here. Come here. Come out or I'm throwing a grenade.
Stop resisting.
Put your hands up. Where are you from? Don't be afraid. Stop resisting. Don't shoot him. Crouch. Well done. Drop the armor. He needs to drop the armor. He has a grenade. Where did they run? There. To the positions? We'll see. If you lied, no. Ask him about the dugout behind. Is there someone in that dugout? That hole. No, no one's there. I effing swear. We know you effing swear. We now see the soldier firing his AK-12 towards the direction of that dugout. How many people did you have in that position? About 7. How many ran there from here? 3. So about 10 people. What armaments did you have? Anything heavy? They have 2 something, but neither effing work. We're assuming that those are RPGs that he's speaking of. How many battlements are there? 2 or 3? We have a drone incoming, most likely. Based off of the information that this Russian soldier gave after he surrendered, we heard that there was an after-battle report that came out, although we don't have any additional picture or video evidence to confirm it, that the Ukrainians were able to, well, the National Police of Ukraine moved forward to assault the next positions, which were 50 yards away, which the Russian prisoner was speaking of, and ended up taking out approximately 3 Russian soldiers, capturing another 5, and the remainder, I believe it was 2 or 3 of them, retreated to another position further back, although the front line does retain its structure and cohesion that it had at the beginning of the day, at least as far as the frontline map goes. Nevertheless, it's showing that the Ukrainian defenses and the Ukrainian police, oddly enough, have a very strong defensive cohesion, and not only that, are able to also use that in the counterattack quite well to then clear out Russian positions and trenches, although we do not at the moment have additional video or picture evidence of the Ukrainian police advancing forward and on to the next fortification. Once we get that footage, which probably I would suspect would probably come out within the next 3 days, we're going to add this onto the map, circle back, and talk about this specific battle that occurred today on the northern end of Klishchiivka. At the exact same time the battle on the northern side of Klishchiivka was occurring, we also saw that on the western side, the defenses holding there also appeared to come under some heavy Russian fire and was engaged in battle. These defenses are somewhere halfway in between the village of Klishchiivka itself and the railroad berm, which the Russians have been using as a defensive structure for the large part to stop direct Ukrainian fire from coming down on them onto the other side of the railroad berm. In this clip, we see that it's largely an intense firefight, but it doesn't really appear that many casualties are taken by either side visibly. Nevertheless, it does show the intensity of fighting in this area, and it does show a Russian assault that apparently followed along with the one that occurred on the northern end of the village as well. On the bottom side of the screen are the Ukrainian soldiers. On the top side of the screen are the Russian soldiers. We can see a decent amount of grenades landing in the center of the battlefield, or more so, the fight. We can see one of the Ukrainian soldiers just stand up and start advancing at the Russians. He then fires at him. Another grenade explodes. The Ukrainian soldier continues to walk forward, laying down fire. He's now crouched down to reload his AK. He just waved forward the rest of his men to come even closer to the Russians at around 20 to 30 yards. We can now see another Russian running up and throwing a grenade. It appears to have exploded inside the trench just 5 yards in front of the Ukrainian. The Ukrainian is now getting inside of that trench and is then firing into some of the dugouts, falling back after seeing a grenade. It appears that this Russian is continuing to try and throw grenades at them. You see another Ukrainian soldier walking forward to join the Ukrainian that is about 10-15 yards away from the Russians. We can see more grenade explosions occurring here to the right side of the screen as the Ukrainians continue to fight against the Russians inside of the small trench work in the middle of the field. We can see another grenade explode further back and at this last Ukrainian soldier, and it appears that there are some Russian forces that we cannot see on screen that are on the top side of the screen that we're seeing right here. But unfortunately, we cannot see them to really get an idea of the force size or scale. From what we understand, this battle, even after the video ended, largely culminated in no casualties, at least fatalities, that is. We heard that there was possibly 1 or 2 Russians and Ukrainians wounded on both sides. The Russians withdrew, the Ukrainians held the position, and it appears that the defenses from the video footage that we're getting today around Klishchiivka did hold. The winter weather does contribute heavily to the defensive on both sides, and it does appear that at the moment, the Russians are not making any kind of major advances, specifically near Klishchiivka, which is a required anchor point if they wish to move further in towards the high ground of Chasiv Yar, which is behind the city. We're most likely never going to see the Russians break through. It was an incredibly heavy battle late last year in October and November to be able to even take Klishchiivka, and it seems as though they lost it relatively easily during the early part of this year, and since then, they have not been able to advance and take it back. We're assuming that that frontline condition will most likely remain the same, and the Ukrainian defenses here will continue to hold very strongly. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we can also see that a Russian infantry fighting vehicle was hit quite heavily as well. This was done by the Achilles unit, the 92nd Brigade, which is accompanying the famous Fighting 93rd that is also in this area. We can see
music, like for a solid second, sound like that Jordan Peterson fella yelling.
You see, but we can see they're hitting a supply truck. We can also see a BMP-2 moving down the road near Avdiivka. And we can see the FPV drone coming down onto it, hitting right behind, actually right onto the turret, most likely taking out the gunner and the commander. We can also see them hitting a Scooby-Doo van. Like, zoink, Scoob, I think it's coming right for us. But anyways, moving on from that, we can also see them striking a Euro 4320 supply truck that had been pulled off-road.
Raggy, high explosives.
Raggy, demolition. We can also see them hitting a legitimate Scooby-Doo van. We're not even kidding on that one. They hit that one and took it out.
That was literally like the Scooby and the gang was pulled up to the haunted house and they were looking at it, but they came out to a destroyed car.
Like, Zoink Scoop, I don't think we're getting out of here. Raggy. Dude, they moved from running away from the villain to just pure violence. They're like whipping out like the damn like chains and crap on them. But anyways.
Raggy, call a tow truck.
Matthew, the Ukrainians were like, maybe, wait a minute, no. I don't know who you were. I don't know who you are, but maybe you should start changing your ways. Or maybe changing your names. That's what the Ukrainians did on the Russians. But also, at the end of this clip, we got to see that the 92nd Brigade tallied up the losses that we saw in each clip. It appears that the Russians lost to BMP-2 without the Concours. This picture shows that it has a Concours ATGM on top of it. Hardly any Russian BMPs at this point in the war are equipped with Concours ATGMs on top of the turret. And they also lost this civilian supply truck is the best way to explain it. They also lost a proper Euro 4320 and a Scooby-Doo van and also a Scooby-Doo van with a flatbed. So all in all, the losses that they were able to inflict over the last 24 hours, at least on the logistical end of this Russian unit that's in the area, was pretty decent. It does also appear that they were able to knock out the one IFV, and while that's nice, it's probably not going to contribute massively to any kind of a frontline change, at least at this moment right now. But also, let me make sure that it rounds out. I think it's just showing the casualty report. It's also showing a little QR code right there. But with that, that's the end of the clip. and showing that the Ukrainians appear to be mounting a fairly effective defense of the area. We're expecting that this defensive, once again, will most likely hold, because at this point in the war, it does appear that the defender has the ultimate advantage in the battle and most likely will end up being the winner. We're only seeing one area where that may be different, which is in the direction of Krynky at the moment, but we're going to be getting to that in a minute because that was raw insanity what was happening down there today, and it does appear, based off of the Russians' reaction today, that the Ukrainians may actually be making progress in this area and the Russians are starting to roll out even larger weaponry to try and stop the advance. But we need to talk about something else that was a little underplayed today, but still a pretty important point. The Freedom of Russia Legion, once again, moved across the border, invaded the Russians for a small while, and then retreated. This happened specifically near the small village of Terebreno, where there's a border checkpoint in between the Ukrainians and the Russians. It appears that they attacked and overran the border checkpoint, moved into the village of Terebreno, possibly helping out partisans in the area or meeting up with partisans. We're not entirely sure of the exact details of what happened in the village, but they did go into the village for a short while and then they withdrew back across the border. All this occurred within the span of around 12 to 16 hours from what we're estimating, and we're also able to get a small amount of footage from the Freedom of Russia Legion showing their activities. This also occurred on the 17th of December. We covered this several days ago, but the footage finally just came out, and so now we get to show it to you all. And so here's the clip. And they got the trap, so we got to mute it. But we can see the Freedom of Russia Legion moving through the snow. This is either on the border or across the border inside of Russia. Oddly enough, there are practically no defenses that the Russians have put up in the area of the Belgorod Oblast. We have seen that heavy fortifications have been made by the governors of the Kursk and Bryansk Oblasts, but no such precautions have been made in the area of Belgorod. This is a little bit odd, considering that Belgorod is usually the flashpoint for a lot of cross-border raids from the Freedom of Russia Legion or the Russian Volunteer Corps, but nevertheless, they just never have made defenses. We don't really know why. But we can see one of the FOR machine gunners setting up on that berm. We can also see this guy with a very interesting winter camo that looks like it came straight out of Walmart. Mad respect. You can see this guy here has a digital winter camo pattern, and we can also see that now they're geolocating the clip for us. Good job on that. Thanks. But we can see them pointing out the village house that they're moving into in the village of Terebreno. Apparently they blurred out the rifle. I don't know why. Apparently violence is something that gets blurred out by the Freedom of Russia Legion, although it's a war. We can see them firing at a possible border guard that they've highlighted. The spacing in this group, I gotta be honest with y'all, the spacing there was freaking me out a little bit. It was like, damn, these guys are like right on top of each other right here, maybe like 3-4 feet apart. If the border guards have a mortar, like, it's going to be a bad day. Apparently they didn't, because from what we heard, the Freedom of Russia Legion only took one wounded soldier, which was fairly decent considering they went up against a border guard company. We can see them continuing to fire through the underbrush. We can't really see if they have a clear line of sight, and we can't really see what they're firing at. We can see that this soldier appears to be laying down some kind of a suppressive firepower. We can see the Freedom of Russia Legion continuing to advance. It appears that he has an AT-4 that he's now firing at the building and hitting. And we can also see some kind of a light trench work that was made by the Border Guard Service, although it's not manned at all. We can also see another FOR soldier firing a grenade launcher at the building. We see them trying to observe what kind of damage has been caused. We now see them moving through the woods, possibly starting to retreat back out of the area. We can see a bullet snap up off the ground right over there. And we can now see them moving some kind of a... It looks like it may even be a Mark 19 grenade launcher into position. Oh, actually, it's an AGS, correction. But we can see them firing the AGS. I swore that was a Mark 19 for a second. Sorry about that. But we can see them now moving towards the building. It looks like they completely leveled the building. And that's the end of the clip. But it does show at least a small portion of what the Freedom of Russia Legion did during that 12 to 16 hours they were inside of the Russian Federation. Hopefully the damage that they were able to cause was decent to the Russian border guards and will be having a long-lasting effect, at least for, well, when I mean long-lasting effect, it's relative, because it probably will have an effect on the Russian border guard service in this area for the next couple of days, maybe the next couple of weeks, and the Russians will probably start to look more into their border security over the next few days, or they may do nothing, because it appears that in particular in the Belgorod Oblast, they're not really doing a lot to respond to the attacks. A decent amount has been done in Kursk and Bryansk. We've actually heard that not only have they laid out barbed wire and not only that dragon's teeth in those oblasts, but they possibly may have laid out anti-personnel minefields, although that's a bit of a rumor at this point, and we haven't been able to confirm that. We've heard of no such defenses being prepared in Belgorod, neither dragon's teeth nor any kind of razor wire or anti-personnel minefields. We're not seeing any of that, and it is kind of odd. But nevertheless, moving on from that, we did see that overnight, the Russians did launch a very large drone and missile attack against the Ukrainians once again, targeting civilian infrastructure, particularly of the power grid. Over the past night, the Ukrainians were able to successfully shoot down an incredibly large amount of the incoming Shaheds. Something around 34 Shahed 136 drones were shot down, but unfortunately, it does appear that the air defense was not able to shoot down all of them, as one Shahed was recorded hitting a large high-rise, or more so a civilian house, inside of Kyiv. And we got the video footage of that right here. We hear the sound of the Shahed flying in and slamming into the high-rise building over there. See him looking out. Very unfortunate to see. We also got additional pictures and video evidence showing the damage inside of Kyiv and showing what happened. This is actually that very apartment building that we just saw getting struck by the Shahed just about an hour later, when the first responders were able to make it into the apartment and assess the damage. It was quite severe, and from what we can understand, that Shahed 136 drone had to have been deliberately piloted into the side of the building, because Shahed 136s are able to keep connection with their operators practically until the point of impact. We have heard that apparently around the altitude of 100 to 70 feet or less, the Shahed signal does get very grainy and may even be lost, much like we see with Ukrainian FPV drones near the front lines. This apartment room that we see here in this picture was apparently hit almost on the 15th floor of the building, meaning that the operator of this Shahed was deliberately attacking this apartment and struck it. We have not heard any additional reports about possible civilians that were wounded or killed in this attack, but it was a damaging blow to the building, and hopefully, when we get those reports, it was minor wounds that were sustained, or hopefully no wounds at all were sustained by Ukrainian citizens. But it is showing that the attacks are once again being deliberately targeted towards the Ukrainian citizenry itself instead of vital military targets, which the Shahed is kind of designed to do. The Shahed is guided completely by an operator in a command center all the way until it hits its target. And that means that whenever you see a Shahed 136 hitting anything else rather than a military target, like an energy substation, or for example a civilian high-rise like that, that means that the drone was deliberately guided into that and hit it as its target of choice. But moving on from that, and once again, evidence of possible Russian, well, not really possible, but clear Russian war crimes, we're now going to be moving on into the area of southern Chernihiv and the Chernihiv Oblast, where we got to see a Ukrainian soldier posing with a Stinger. These are largely a decent amount of the Ukrainian air defenses, especially, oddly enough, against cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. We've seen that manpads have been the #1 killer of most of those incoming cruise and ballistic missiles since mid-last year, and we've seen that they've still been the #1 killer. We can also see that right behind the soldier is a Gepard 1A2 that was also provided by the Germans a little bit earlier on in the war. And I gotta say, a really cool picture showing off some of the key air defenses or air defense systems that have been used around Kyiv to stop incoming drones and missiles. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little picture showing off the Ukrainian air defenses that successfully shot down most of the incoming air targets, but not all of them. And we're now going to be moving on down into the area of our location unknowns. And we actually have just a few of them, and not really a lot. The first one actually showed us an Mi-17 flying around in winter weather conditions, and I had to say, it was incredibly nice to see. Well, you see the engine spooling up, and some of y'all are like, that's got to be in post-edit. No, that actually is the engine spooling up. It spews out flames. It's Soviet. But we can see the beginning of the Mi-17. We see it hovering over the ground. And a slow-mo, sick slow-mo. We know about slow-mo.
I love slow-mo.
Oh, man. Dude, that's actually some really good footage right here.
I don't know how they got this footage. With another helicopter or a drone?
bet you they got it with a drone because they love them drones. But at the same time, I feel like the drone wouldn't be able to fly through all of the like the vortices so well. But whoever did this filming, amazing stuff. But oh wait a minute, we actually got an advertisement right here. Aerotim, aerobatics and stunts. Let's go pull up their company. Let's go pull up their company and find out what they're doing. Aerotim. So, let's see here. Aerotim is a team of, well, come on, load website. They've got like this whole website. Wait, hang on. Overall World Intermediate Aerobatic Champion Team 2019. So, let's see. What do they do? Good lord, dude. These guys do literally everything that you could imagine that has to do with an aircraft. Like, they will fly a stunt plane, like a Red Bull stunt plane, and they'll also film it at the same time with drones and also with helicopters and other people. I feel like that was mostly done with a drone right there because it doesn't even tell us exactly about it on their website. But I'm not going to lie. Let me show you their website. Their website is actually pretty sick. Look at this.
It is sick. Like, they've got a... That is extremely cool, actually. I like that. They're really good at web design.
Yeah, that is pretty damn nice. I mean, like, very impressive right there. But with that, we're not going to rabbit hole too much on that. It'll still really need to see their kind of cinematography with the Mi-17. And with that, we're moving on to our next clip, where we got to hear about the Ukrainians apparently getting a really big liking for the AR-15 platform. You know, and a lot of people know it under different names. The M16A1, the M16A2, the M16A3s and 4s, the M4 carbine, the XM177, I believe, is something of a carbine variant that exists out there. There are loads of AR platforms that exist out there. There's an endless variety of them. And the Ukrainians are now adding their own to the mix. The UAR-15. This is designed, and let me make sure I'm getting the company correct here, because I think it shows it. We can also see the iron sights they have. Daniel Defense iron sights! They going all out.
Those are the same ones I've got. What do you know? I know
know?
they work really well.
Oh, and they do. They do work quite well. This one was designed by Ukrop, but there was another company that originally designed the UAR-15, but it appears that the Ukrainians have done something of a wartime production move, and they're allowing companies to license build these AR-15, well, these UAR-15s. And from what we understand, they're not that bad. They also have, Matthew, that easily interchangeable barrel with the two locking lugs on the bottom, a lot like an LMT AR-15 from Estonia or Finland. A very interesting modification because that actually allows for a very quick change of your barrel. It allows you to create... I'm
glad to know that I got to see one of those up close. I got to say.
Yeah, and also, huge shout out to Jay Bagwell, who told us about this stuff. Hey! And we're about to be getting to that in a second, because the reason why we're showing this rifle is two-pointed, but it's also to show how cool this rifle is. From what I would understand, and I'm taking a bit of a guess at this, I would guess that this thing is a gas piston AR, just because it also has the interchangeable barrel. It may be very closely designed to the LMT style rifles that we got to see today that have a gas piston instead of direct impingement. Nevertheless, these are probably pretty decent ARs as far as they go. Not really filled in the optics department, it's just simple iron sights, but nevertheless, it does appear that the Ukrainians are trying to get ARs or AR-style rifles into their armed forces as best as they possibly can, which is an interesting note. And not only an interesting note, it's something good to tell. And it is showing that the Ukrainians are trying to eke out a little bit of extra performance in the small arms world.
You know, something that would look great on top of this gun is if you put an Elcan Spectre on top of it.
You know, that I'm not gonna lie, man. You're thinking
what do you
what
know?
I'm thinking right now. What do you know? What do you know? But speaking of Elcan Spectres and all kinds of stuff like that, we have something really big to share with all of y'all, and we have to get y'all hyped up and ready for it because it'll be coming out on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a premiere, and it's going to be quite special. It's going to be incredibly neat. We're coming out with our first gun review ever on this channel. It is going to be on the AK-74, which is what this UAR-15 is going to be attempting to replace. We also have another review that will be coming out in the future. We already have a photo shoot of it on Patreon, but we're also doing a gun review of the P90, specifically the PS90 that we were able to get a hold of. But we did the review, and I've seen the editing and the final post, well, not really the final post edit, but nearly the rough finish of it, and it is very good. I have to say, I'm actually very blown away with what we've come up with. It's very interesting, very neat. The video is about 9 minutes and 30 seconds long, and it will premiere for all of y'all to see tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, not tomorrow. It's actually going to be Saturday. Sorry, correction. Saturday at 4 p.m.
I was about to say, man, you're trying to make my work schedule so crazy.
Man,
Tomorrow.
Man, he felt like he was working for Pixar. He was like, tomorrow? He was like, what the hell do you mean? But on Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, I got to make that clear. Saturday, not tomorrow. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. But Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, our first gun review is going to be coming out. We're going to be talking all about the AK-74, giving a little bit of background about it, showing how it shoots. It's a really cool intro. We're also going to be doing photo shoots with it and a whole bunch of other stuff, but nevertheless, it is going to be incredibly cool. And we are so proud and very happy that we were able to get to this point with all of y'all. We have always been talking about doing gun reviews and other kinds of stuff like that. We've finally been able to make it to where we have been able to do it. And I got to just give a huge credit to all of y'all. And thank y'all all so much once again for being here with us, sticking with us, hitting the like button and sharing this with everyone, because y'all have made this possible for us to do. And while reporting on wars around the world and current events has always been a dream of mine, it's also been a dream of mine to try and get around to being able to talk about firearms and other things that relate to the military world. It's always been interesting to me, and I cannot wait to show you all what we've made with this video. It's incredibly cool. We actually already have a YouTube short that is ready. We're not going to be showing that. It's actually going to be uploaded at the exact same time that the video, well, the video is going to premiere at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. It's also going to be uploaded at the exact same time, but it is just incredibly cool. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Once again, an incredibly cool little UAR-15, and maybe, just maybe, if y'all think this is a neat rifle, we'll be able to review a very similar AR in the future. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Also, by the way, I have to give a huge shout out, speaking of that rifle, to Jay Bagwell, a longtime channel viewer, old guard of the Lee Spring Army, as old as before the Lee Spring Army even existed. And not only that, he helped us out with getting to the range that we were at today and was there with us while we filmed. Jay is not only a viewer of this channel, he is a great friend of ours, and we have to thank him greatly for helping us to get to that range today and make that part of the video possible. It was probably, honestly, one of the best parts of the video. A little bit of the shorter part, but nevertheless, it was very good and it was just top of the line looking. And we got to thank you for making that part of the video possible, Jay, because folks like you add a great deal to what we were able to do. And not only that, you're an incredibly cool person to hang out with. And so thank you once again.
Indeed, I second that. And huge shout out to you, Jay, and huge thanks for taking us to the range today, because without that, I don't know where we would have shot that gun review video. So huge thanks once again. Seriously, big thanks.
Great thanks, many thanks. But with that,
I'm telling you, it's the biggest thanks. You're going to get tired of me thanking you. I'm thanking you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that UAR.
And that transition, though. Oh, my God.
With that, we're going to be moving on from that UAR-15 and on into the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours, as reported by Kyiv Independent. And it's pretty high.
Oh, my goodness. They got 5 Bobcats. Let's go.
Let's get it, baby. And they were able to get 5 special equipment vehicles over the past 24 hours. But not only that, we also saw some pretty interesting figures in other categories. We got to see that 1,080 Russian troops were knocked out over the past 24 hours. And of course, we've been under the assumption the entire war that this does not include all casualties. This is simply fatalities. And it does appear that it has remained within the average for about the past month. Over the past month, we've seen the casualty number anywhere in between 1,300 to 800, so this does appear to be largely within the norm, and showing that the Ukrainian defenses were quite successful over the past 24 hours. Not only that, but 31 armored personnel carriers were lost, which is actually higher than average. We also got to see that 48 supply trucks were also destroyed as well up above average. That's actually a very high day as far as the losses go. We also saw that 14 main battle tanks were also destroyed as well, along with 20 artillery pieces, 26 drones, 4 MLRSs, and 1 cruise missile. Also, I have to make a quick note that they finally surpassed 350,000 Russian soldiers lost in the war. So we are quickly marching on our way towards 400,000 Russian soldiers lost in this one war. These numbers are incredibly high, and compared to even World War II numbers, this is getting into astronomically high figures. The United States lost an approximate 500,000 soldiers in the Second World War, and the British lost around 450,000, and that also includes the civilian deaths as well. We are getting very close to, just in the course of around 2 years of war inside of Ukraine, the Russians losing as many soldiers as the United States lost in World War II, or the United Kingdom for that matter, kind of putting into scale how high the losses have really been. And out of all of that, 2 years later, they are still in the war, and it doesn't appear that there is any kind of a Russian victory in sight, which means, for the large part, the Ukrainians are winning at the whole surviving the Russians thing, and hopefully will also be getting further support, so that way they can push the Russians out of places like Crimea, and push the Black Sea Fleet out of there. But we're going to be moving on from the casualty report, because outside of Avdiivka, which we've covered pretty well, there are a lot of places that were heavily active on the front lines today, and we have to make sure to cover. But not only that, we have to talk to y'all about the Sarmat Washington, Sarmat Washington, guy, because I didn't get the clip. But I think we have it on Twitter, Matthew, if I'm correct.
We do. We don't have a clip of it, but we got a photo of the abomination erect on the side of the street. It's lovely.
So let me show y'all this real quick. So y'all may remember the Washington guy, you know, who has like the nuclear bomb on top of his car. He crashed into an embankment today, totaling the car, and then they just placed the giant fake cardboard rocket on the side. So, gotta say,
oh my god, look at that crap on the right. What is that? Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That's horrible.
Dude. Ew. Dude. I
don't even know what to say about that. That's interesting.
That's new to me. I'll tell you that. That's very new to me. But anyways, it crashed. And a lot of y'all have been talking about this. It kind of like it is a symbolic thing about the war for the Russians. But not only that, it's just kind of funny. And we haven't really talked about this thing in a while. It's been driving around Russia since the war began. And it looks like the clown crashed it into a snow embankment. The last time this thing crashed, he actually crashed into a bus full of Russian soldiers in Sevastopol in Crimea. But it just appears they have to try and top themselves one after the other. Now they totaled the car. But what have people been saying about this thing, Matthew?
All right, so the poll question said, Russian propaganda car Sarmat na Washington crashed in Russia, and is the legacy over? 41% said, what the hell is that? 28% said Sarmat Washington is finished. 20% said they will be back, sadly. And 11% said unsure. And on this one, for some reason, the people that have like organized this whole little protest with this fake missile and this car, they always seem to fix their car and come back. And I really hate that because I wish they would total it so it'd be done with. It's really obnoxious. Their chant is obnoxious. And also, they're basically cheering on their own death, which makes no sense. But I just hate this thing. Like, I really do. It's obnoxious as hell. But I think they're going to be back, sadly. That's the end result. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, their chant makes you wish for a nuclear winter. Like, I'm not even going to lie. It's like, come on, just get it on. But honestly, you know, this guy is crazy or something. He does this for like a living. He drives around all of Russia with this thing. And it's not even like it's a sight. It's a giant cardboard tube, like with a cone. You know, it's not even like it's neat. It's just lame. But nevertheless, I would have to agree with y'all. What the hell is even that? And also, I would also have to agree with the other part of y'all that says Sarmat Washington will be finished. And sadly, the 20% of y'all who said he will be back, y'all are correct. This guy will be back. He crashed into a public bus before, and then he came back. I'm sure that this is not going to dissuade our nuclear winter-loving guy. He's going to be back with this thing and driving around Russia again. But with that, hope that does address that well in my opinion. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our second poll, real quick while I tag something in the live chat. The second one says, Ukraine has begun asking Ukrainian civilians living abroad to return and fight in the war, and what are your thoughts? 43% said they will return voluntarily, 27% said Ukraine will have to force them back, 20% said unsure, and 10% said, I really don't like the sound of that. And considering that Ukraine is going to have to ramp up their manpower numbers significantly, especially with the lack of equipment and also supplies coming from the West, I think this is a logical next step. The question here being, are the people going to return voluntarily? And I think right now that is kind of a question that's going to remain up in the air. I have a suspicion, a hunch, that a lot of them are not going to want to come back, because why would they have left in the first place if they really felt strongly about fighting for their country? So, they might have difficulty getting them back, but I think there are ways that Ukraine can kind of compel them or force them to come back. But of course, they're going to have to sort of devise ways to sort of, coerce them back, which is going to be a little bit difficult in itself. But I see that are already working on getting some people back from Germany, so it appears they're pretty quick moving on this one. They need soldiers quick. But Enforcer, what say you?
Uh-oh, shiver me timbers. That sounds terrible.
Yikes.
Yikes, jeepers, creepers. Now, to address that seriously, the need for manpower in Ukraine is something that never went away, and some people have been laboring under the misassumption that males could leave Ukraine voluntarily if they had a good reason. And from what we understand throughout the entirety of the war, that was never true. Males could not leave the country. Women and children could, but male citizens in between the ages of 18 and I think like 45, I think was the cap, could not leave under any circumstances. Some have, and and they've done their thing, but nevertheless, that was never supposed to happen. And it does appear that the Ukrainians are now trying to figure out who left and get them back. And I know some people are going to say, some people had, medical disqualifications, but here's the thing though, that's usually something that's addressed once you're conscripted. You still get conscripted. For example, in the United States, all males over the age of 18 years old must sign up for the selective service, regardless of your medical conditions. But if a selective service draft ever happened, you would go to MEPS, which is the medical processing station, and you would go in there, and then they go, you know what, this guy is not fit for military service, and then they'd throw you out. And then you wouldn't be able to get into the military, or you wouldn't be drafted into the military. That's how it works. That's also how it works in Ukraine as well. So there's no such thing as, I got a doctor's note, I'm not going into the military. It's more so you sit inside of Ukraine because you can't leave, because there's martial law imposed at the moment. You sit there and wait until you get the conscription notice. You go down to the conscription office, say, I can't be a conscript because I have a medical issue, and then they decide whether you can be a conscript or not. That's how that works. So I would have to say it's something to hear that they're doing that. I don't think it's a bad thing because, we've also done that before in the past. Let me try and figure out how to put this. For example, in Vietnam, whenever anyone went to Canada to try and avoid the draft, we usually would try and get them back, or they come back and then they get into some trouble, although there are some exceptions where that did not happen. And I'm sure y'all could think of some notable examples. But nevertheless,
weren't people running over their feet and flattening their feet to avoid the draft, for the Vietnam draft?
People were shooting themselves in the foot. The people were eating cotton balls to make it look like they may have had cancer in their lungs. People were doing all kinds of stupid crap back then to try and get out of the draft. But the honest thing is, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, you never served. And yeah, you're right. But the honest thing is, regardless whether you served or not, there is a duty that you have to your nation, especially for Ukraine, as a Ukrainian citizen, and certainly as a man, you have a duty to defend your nation. You just can't run away from it, and if you do, it's like, I can kind of get it, but at the same time, that's still betraying your nation that you grew up in everything else that's pretty much been your whole life. Going
and also, there's so many other roles than simply as being a soldier. I mean, you could be a pilot. People that are pilots and trained in flying aircraft, that's a valuable skill. You don't necessarily have to get out there and, fight on the front line if you have a medical issue or something like that. You can help out in other ways. But, if you just take off and go, you can't help out at all.
That's true. And it sounds as though it seems like the Ukrainians are going to be trying to get these people back. It's something that we've talked about in the past, actually. We've talked about this. People went, oh, you shouldn't be judging people because these people were allowed to leave. And now it appears, based off the Ukrainian government statement, any male who left that was in that age bracket was not allowed to leave, at least from what we're hearing right now. So, that kind of changes the story on what's going on out there. And also, John Smith said, Enforcer just said duty. Yeah, I think I did. I can never say duty. I can't, so I just say duty. I know, I'm sorry, everyone. But nevertheless, you've got a duty to your duty, you know what I mean? But anyways, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, because if that's what the Ukrainians have to do, that's what they must do. And on top of that, there has to be some kind of a consequence to draft dodging or conscription dodging, because There must be. It's a national duty to serve your nation if you have to. But with that, hope that does address that well. And also, I saw Michael Johnson, hot take here. He said having to sign up for the draft is stupid because they already know by your bank records, driving license, and everything else where to find you better than the draft card does. But really, the signing up for the selective service thing just kind of makes a registry that's a lot easier for them instead of having to go through your bank records and whatnot. Because what if, for example, you just never got a job, or you never opened up a bank account? They may not ever know that you existed. So instead, they have you sign up for a registry. It makes sense to me on a bureaucratic level because, the U.S. just works on the bureaucratic end of things. So they always want to make sure to actually have a registry made for that sort of stuff. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we are fresh out of polls now, so we're moving on to our super chat questions. Actually, the first time of the night. I was about to say again, but we haven't moved on to them the first time. And the first one goes to Enforcer for President, longtime channel viewer who puts in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Enforcer for President, for that support. And they said, Merry Christmas to the LSA, and contact your representatives and let them know we must continue to support Ukraine. God bless Israel, Slava Ukraine, and long live the LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, Enforcer for President. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for voting for me for president in 2040. And also, Merry Christmas to everyone in the LSA as well. Y'all all know what's coming around on Christmas. We are, of course, going to have the traditional Christmas address that we've always had on this channel, and we'll be recapping what's happened over this last year then, and also talking about what Christmas means, especially to everyone in the Leaf Spring Army. And also, I would have to agree greatly with you, Enforcer for President, that everyone should always be, if you consider the war in Ukraine important, for whatever reason it may be. Some of y'all find the war in Ukraine important because it's a violation of national sovereignty. Some, including myself, find it important for American strategic interests to make sure that we are able to keep the Russians and the Chinese on the down and keep the Western world on the up and up. There's all different kinds of reasons that people support Ukraine. But if you support Ukraine, regardless of what your reason is, it's always important to let your congressional representatives or your members of parliament, for those who are around the world, know what you think about supporting Ukraine. Some of these people kind of lose sight every once in a while on what it means, or may not support the war because they look at it a different way. But maybe by writing them and telling them that you're one of their constituents and voters that voted for them in the last election, and tell them why you think that supporting the war in Ukraine is important, they may start to change their mindset, especially if they get a lot of letters like that. And so, thank you so much for pointing that out again, Enforcer President, because that is a very important thing for everyone to do. Far more important than really any, well, there's other important things as well. Fundraising, all that kind of stuff is important. But also contacting representatives to get real military support going over there is also very important as well. But also, God bless Israel and Slava Ukraini. And long live the Leaf Spring Army. Because we all know the Leaf Spring Army never dies. No matter how much some people want it to die, it never will. And I love it. They can live with it. But anyways, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And once again, because we have hardly been able to say this, and it's crazy to think that Christmas is only 4 days away. Merry Christmas to every single one of y'all. It is a great deal to know that we've made it to another Christmas. It's a great deal to know that the Ukrainians have been able to keep fighting until another Christmas, and hopefully we'll all be around for the next one. And so, Merry Christmas to all of y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. And our next super chat is going to go to Aaron Shu, who's also a longtime channel legend, and he throws in a $100 donation. And thank you very much, Aaron, as well for that support. He says, afford the pizza and the ammo fund, and take a question from the live chat. And of course, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini. And thank you so much once again, Aaron Shu, for that massive support, and also supporting the pizza and ammo fund. Of course, ammo is kind of cheap in some ammo categories. In others, it ain't. But nevertheless, I thank you so much once again for the support, Aaron, and you're helping this channel to keep on running and helping us get some pizza. We had Papa John's last night, and I got to tell y'all, I was kind of knocking on Papa John's for a little bit, like a few months ago. They've upped the quality, at least at our Papa John's that we eat at. Oh my lord, it is actually like finger looking good now. Like I was like, wow, this is a really good pizza, and I was blown away by that.
They brought the owner back, by the way. That's why it got so much better at ours, because the owner's working in there now, because you can't get employees, I don't think.
Man, the owner be like, the owner is like,
The owner knows how to cook.
dude, the owner came in, and I was like, wait, let him cook, because that man cooks up a pizza. But nevertheless, thank you so much for helping us to get ammo and pizza, and also, I pulled out the stops on the AK review just to let y'all know. We whipped out real Soviet vintage 7.6 armor piercing rounds, which are standard issue during the Soviet Union, and also standard issue for both the Ukrainians and the Russians fighting this war right now. And we did that just to get the most realistic experience shooting the AK as possible. And tracking that down is actually a little tough because due to import bans, there's a limited amount of it and it's just being used up. So that was a little interesting to find, and I hope y'all like that extra little detail that we put into the video because it was really cool to be able to shoot it. It was the first time I ever shot that ammo too, because up until that point, we had only been shooting steel-cased ammo through it. It was Red Army standard ammunition. But nevertheless, the 7.6 stuff, oddly enough, didn't really flash as bright as Red Army Standard did. So I'm guessing it's a difference in between non-corrosive gunpowder and corrosive gunpowder inside of the cartridge, because this stuff was really smoky. I mean, it was super smoky. And the Red Army Standard stuff isn't that smoky. It's just super bright flash. And it was a huge difference to me. I was like, huh, that's odd. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again. And we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the question from the live chat is going to go to Rats, who says, are actual bayonets on rifles still used in modern combat? I have to say, first of all, before you answer that question, Rats, I got to say, I know you like rats and mice and stuff like that, but they're becoming a major problem in Ukraine, I'm telling you. I hope you've never seen the videos coming out of Ukraine, because I'm telling you, it's not good. The rats are getting no respect, I'm telling you.
And also, isn't Rats Pack Rat?
It is. I think he rebranded.
Yeah, I was like, I swear, Rats is Pack Rat, and like, what a name, what a name. And you've been around forever too, Pack Rat. I'll always remember you as Pack Rat. But to answer that question, wait, can you reread that question again, just to make sure I heard it?
And this time it was my fault. I know why I'm rereading it this time. They said, are actual bayonets on rifles still used in modern combat?
Mostly no. It's very rarely used. I believe the last time bayonets were used was by a British unit in Afghanistan in like 2007 or 2008, and even then it was kind of a bit of a stretch to use the bayonet. Bayonets, or at least the equipment of a bayonet lug onto modern NATO service rifles, is still a requirement, but at the same time, bayonets are rarely ever issued, if hardly ever at this point, especially in Western militaries, and on top of that, they're also quite rarely used. We just don't really see them a lot out there anymore. To be honest, bayonets, they actually do serve a purpose. If you're taking prisoners, apparently from what they found, bayonets do have a massive psychological effect on prisoners of war and make sure to keep order a lot better. Apparently it instills fear in the prisoners for you to have a bayonet mounted onto your rifle. So beyond that, we don't really see a lot of use for them because the modern world and the modern war just doesn't really allow for the use of bayonets. Well, the last time we saw bayonets being used effectively was the Franco-Prussian War of 1879. Beyond that, bayonets have kind of fallen to the wayside. Even in World War I, bayonets were really at their limit of usefulness, and beyond that, we've seen that the bayonet has practically gone into obsolescence. Modern firearms fail so little, and not only that, are able to get such a rate of fire that the requirement of a bayonet is just not really there, because anything that may need you to use a bayonet at this point, you have a rifle to use, and it has a, either in semi-auto or in auto, it has a rate of fire that is needed to be able to deal with anything, whether it be up close or a distance away. So the bayonet kind of lost its usefulness. But nevertheless, they are still out there, just not in huge numbers, and we barely ever get to see them now for that reason. Even in World War I, just to quickly kind of like recap, because I know a lot of people hear about those bayonet charges of World War I, done by the British Expeditionary Forces, the French Army, and also the AEF, but while they would equip the bayonets and charge across no man's land, the bayonet didn't really do anything. It was more so it was more so improvised weapons, either made out of bayonets or, revolvers or pistols that they would use once they got in the trench that really did most of the work. Or because the rifles were so long, and usually the bayonets back then were like 1.5 feet long or nearly 2 feet long for some rifles, the rifles with the bayonet equipped were so long that they became cumbersome and unusable in the trenches, so they would end up not using the bayonet. They would end up taking the bayonet off before they made it to the enemy trench, and then they would just go in with the rifle alone and just use it like a club. So even then, you could see that 100 years ago, the bayonet was hardly usable. Now it certainly isn't usable hardly much at all. So I hope that really does address that the best I can. And thank you, Packrat, for asking a really good question. But with that, we are on to the final question. But before we do, a huge thanks to Aaron Shu once again for the massive amount of support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, what is the last question of this chat?
In the last one of the Super Chat segment goes to Harvey the Drummer, also another longtime channel legend. He throws in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Harvey, for the support. He said, I just joined your Patreon, and thanks for not skipping over day 600 and you know what. Like most elevators don't have a 13th floor. And he says, are you guys brothers and best friends, cousins, and long live DLC? And we're actually brothers, believe it or not.
And also, yes, we are actually brothers. We are, Matthew is actually older than me. That's the best way to explain it. I was about to give the exact age difference, but Matthew is older than me, and I'm a little younger. This is probably going to come as a shock to many viewers who haven't heard this before, but it's just a fact of life, so, I don't really feel that bad saying it. Matthew is 23, and I'm 21. I'll soon be 22, but at the moment, I'm only 21. And some people are going to be like, wait a minute, I've been getting war news from a 21-year-old? Yes, you have. And apparently it's been quality enough for you to stick around. So keep sticking around and keep hitting that like button. Because if you like what we're doing now, think about when we, marinate for a little bit. We'll probably be like a fine wine. But nevertheless, thank you so much for asking about that, because we are both brothers. And as Jay Bagwell was actually talking today, he was like, it's amazing that two brothers are able to get along so well to make this possible. And if only he knew. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I'm telling you, if only you knew the half of it.
If only you knew. But nevertheless, we get along actually quite well for the most part. We do have an argument here and there, but we have made an amazing team. And I gotta say that it's certainly shown in this gun video that's going to be coming out on Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern time on the AK-74, so make sure to watch it. But it really showed, because Matthew's amazing technological and editing skills, along with just me presenting stuff, ended up coming along so well that it's honestly, I'm just so excited to see y'all's reaction to it. We feel like it's going to be an amazing video, and y'all are going to love this thing. And of course, we'll have to wait and see what y'all's real response will be, rather than just trying to tell y'all are going to love it. We'll have to see if y'all love it or not. But I'm still massively excited for what we have coming down the road for all of y'all, and we hope y'all love it as well. But with that, moving on to your next part, thank you for joining the Patreon, Harvey. And let me go check. And oh, I see you did right here. Thank you. Thank you so much. We do have the Patreon in the description of the stream. That's, I guess, another way that we could support the channel. It's more so for the gun review kind of things. But we're still going to, link it in the stream, because a lot of y'all last night said y'all would like to see it here. And I got to thank you for joining it, because we're going to be putting out some gun review stuff there. Of course, everything we do with Ukraine will be free and widely accessible. Of course, through the streams or any short videos that we make in the future, we're not going to put those behind a paywall. But to support the gun review videos, because we already know that YouTube is probably going to come down and limit the AdSense on them, and the gun review videos do cost money, because we have to get the ammunition. Sometimes we also have to get the rifles themselves instead of just loaning them. That ends up costing us a bit. And so we have to make sure to try and find a way to support that end of the channel. And so we had to make a Patreon. And we're going to be putting some Patreon exclusive stuff up. Photo shoots, maybe disassembling the rifle and talking about specific parts, maybe even Q&A live streams where we get to talk to y'all exactly about each gun and what we know about them. That's a whole bunch of stuff we have planned in the future on Patreon for the gun side of things. But of course, I want y'all to know very clearly, everything we do for Ukraine will always be free to access. We are not going to be someone who tries to wrongfully, at least in my mind, wrongfully profit off of the war by making y'all get through a paywall to hear about the war. There are horrendous things happening over there, and if y'all want to support us and thank us for covering this news, the super chats are always there. But we're not going to force y'all to pay anything to hear the news of the war, because I feel like that would be pretty, scummy on our end. So that's why we'll never put anything behind a paywall for the Ukraine war news. But nevertheless, also, I'm glad you did notice that we put the specific number up. I'm not going to say the number just because, but nevertheless, it was just a day, and it's just a day. We can't treat it too special. It's just a day. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again, Harvey, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, let's see, don't forget to add the Patreon link. It's not in the description tonight for me. Is it not? Because I directly copied that thing off of...
Oh, I see it. It's not lit up in blue, but it's there.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Yeah, I see what's wrong here. One second. Let me go. Because it doesn't have the HTTPS thing in front of it. So let me go do that.
Oh.
So it's not a hyperlink. So y'all actually have to go and do a little bit of work putting in the HTTPS thing. So it should be working now because I changed it to the HTTPS thing. So hopefully it works. Let us know if it doesn't, and then I'll go back and try and fix it again. But nevertheless, thank you once again for support, Harvey. Thank you for being a member of this Lee Spring Army. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. Moving on from that, and on into the rest of the news we have tonight, specifically in the northeastern area, we got to see that the K2 Battalion was able to destroy a Russian tank. The K2 Battalion is attached to the 54th Brigade, which is operating in the area of Yahidne and also Klishchiivka in this area of the front line. The K2 is specifically the drone wing of the 54th Brigade, and we can see them putting in some hours right here on film. This also says Solidar Seversk, but based off of the date that we were able to find, and also where the 54th Brigade, which is its parent unit, is, they are probably not in that area any longer. They're probably towards the area of Yahidne. We can see the armored vehicle moving along towards a main road. And we can see the drone coming on in with the RPG attached. Here it comes, and I think we're going to get a closer view of what this is. It appears that it might be a main battle tank with a cope cage attached, and it is. Sadly, we can't tell what kind of a tank it is. It could be a T-80 or a T-72. It's... Hang on, hold up. That looks a lot like the... That looks a lot like the Avdiivka oil refinery. I'm going to have to go and look at this a little bit more, because maybe the K2 has been detached from its parent brigade and is still in the area, the Solidar Seversk front, because that looks a lot like the refinery. But you see that the engine bay has been hit, and the tank is now rolling to a stop, most likely having lost most of its power, or all of its power. Actually, it's continuing on, driving through some kind of a security guard point for what appears to be the refinery. And we now see the tank has rolled to a complete stop. We can see a small amount of pixels moving, and we can see that the crew is bailing. We now see another drone coming in, and really quickly, everyone, I'm going to have to geolocate this, because that little refinery down there is throwing up some bells and whistles that apparently the K2 has been detached from its parent unit and is still in the area of Solidar Seversk, although the rest of the 54th Brigade has moved up towards the Kupiansk direction. And we've immediately found the checkpoint right here, so it does appear. And also, let's see, where's that little checkpoint building? It should be somewhere around here. Maybe up here. Let's see, that is the compound. That we can be sure of. But I can't really find the rest of it. So we are going to move this marker down into the area. So let me take this. So we actually got no videos from the northeastern area today. We're going to put this to where it really is, which is about right there. And then we're going to let the video play again. So here comes the next drone, the second drone. Mr. President, there's been a second drone. And we can see it flying on in towards the checkpoint that is near the southern end of the refinery. When you see the tank sitting there idly, of course already abandoned by the crew, we don't know where the crew went. It appears that they may have scattered in every direction. Yeah, and we can see the rest of the refinery over there on the left side of the screen, so this is down in the Solidar-Seversk area. And here it comes. I'm assuming it kind of gives a T-80 feel, just off of the back shape of the turret, so I think they're hitting some kind of a T-80B series tank. We see the drone hit on the rear of the turret. No additional smoke coming off of the tank at the moment, so that may have been a superficial hit by that drone. Now we can see that apparently a fire has brewed up, so maybe caused by the second drone or the first one, we can't really tell. And we can see that the fire is coming out of the driver's, commander, and gunner's hatch, showing that this tank is most likely going to have a critical ammo detonation here in a moment. It looks like that's already undergoing. It's probably about to spread to the rest of the ammo cache in a minute and cause a critical detonation. We can see the thick black smoke burning, showing that the ammo hasn't exploded yet, at least in full. Now we can see the ammo's exploded. At least some of it. This is actually a pretty tame explosion as far as tank explosions go in this war.
Ah, yes. It does burn so well, I must say.
What are the charges? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal? That's it. Get
There's
your
nothing
hands.
succulent about this fire right here. This is just a burning mess. It's a dumpster fire.
Why in the world did you sound like Johnny Depp? You were like,
That's actually what I was trying to imitate. I don't know why. I was just thinking about a mega pint, and I was thinking, let me imitate that fellow that acts drunk all the time, because, you know, he has women shitting in the bed.
what the hell, man? What is going on?
I don't know, man. I was just thinking about the whole Amber Heard trial, too. There's a lot of stuff running through my head right now. I'm looking at this tank. I'm like, this tank's burning, but what about Johnny Depp?
Okay, interesting line of reasoning. And it is a T-80 BV, and it was completely burned out from the fire. One hell of a segue by Matty.
And also, by the way, speaking of different thoughts going through my mind, the bots have been flooding in like crazy tonight. I don't know what the deal is, but, you know, I've been smacking them left and right, and they're still popping up. Like, tonight, they're just really feeling it.
Dude, they are feeling... Dude, we said we were doing gun reviews. I saw one of them there, like, 2 incels doing a gun review. I was like, oh boy, here we go again. I was like, Romania. But moving on from that and down into the area of Kremenna, we also got to see that a Russian assault was repelled that pushed out of the forest. Now, this was just stupid to me, because they have a pretty decent forest cover in between Kremenna and Dubrova that they've been fighting in down here. And this is where most of the battle's going on. They pushed out from somewhere about right here towards the main road, and they just ended up getting blown away. You could see it coming from a mile away. Apparently the Russians didn't. And look at this. Here we can see a wild cackle of Russians running with absolutely no formation and apparently no command. They've been told to charge the Ukrainian positions, but sadly the Ukrainians are about to charge them like some kind of an Energizer bunny. We can see them with absolutely no spacing, getting hit by a cluster bomb, and we can now see the formation turn into a cluster. They are now trying to figure out what to do as the Ukrainians call in heavier and heavier artillery. Boy, the Russians really didn't see this one coming.
Go ahead and season up the wild animals.
Put some cricket dust on this thing because it is getting absolutely bussing.
Put some sweet baby rays.
Dude, watch out. Don't let Mark Zuckerberg drink the water in the congressional here. He's going to look like a lizard. But anyways, we can see...
Peace out.
Dude, that man acted like an ice cream taster on that water. He went, delicious, smooth, creamy. Just like, what is wrong with you? But anyways, we can see the artillery still coming down on the Russians. We can actually see a couple of destroyed APCs, maybe BMP-2 and a BTR. We can now see some Russians that have survived the artillery barrage moving with very little organization. Actually, no, they're starting to move in a line. It appears they got their organization back. The Ukrainians are about to remove it, and we can see them do a little removal of that organization, newfound organization right there. How stupid. It just infuriates me to see stupidity. Like, you know, we're fighting in the forest because this is the only place we can fight without getting hit by artillery. Both sides have understood that up till this point. And then the Russians go, you know what's a smart idea? Let's move this infantry unit with absolutely no support into the wide open fields so that way they can become gun fodder. It's like, what is the sense? I don't even get it. Whoever that commander was deserves to be, I can't say that because YouTube wouldn't like that. They deserve to be reprimanded heavily, possibly with what they would have called in the 60s revolutionary justice. And you all know what that means. But moving on from that, down into the area of Berestove and Vesely, we got to see that the Russians were getting hit by the 10th Mountain Assault Brigade. Sadly, the Mountain Assault Brigades haven't really been able to shine through in the war due to their doctrinal training, because there aren't really any mountains in this part of Ukraine. But we can see them bringing in their drone. And Melody Francis said, Enforcer, those sound effects sounded very dodgy. Dodgy Dave! Get him out of here!
Listen, don't make it weird. If you don't make it weird, it ain't weird.
Hey, the only thing dodgy about those sound effects are the brand new Dodge trucks that you can buy at your local dealership. Make sure to pick up the brand new pulling horsepower of a Dodge truck and watch this Ukrainian drone pull that sharp turn right into a Russian soldier's ankles. Call this drone LeBron because it just broke that man's ankles. Watch as another one come. Ooh! Surprise, surprise. We can see another group of Russians running down the railroad berm and, oh.
Well, while you're talking about that, I just saw a bot pop up in the chat once again. I just want to call this off because it's so interesting. They said, Ukraine lost. This guy is talking crap. Well, guess what? Ukraine has won, or we wouldn't be here talking about it today, and they're still winning. So, guess what? Bye-bye, troll.
But
Bye-bye.
They're talking about everyone's always talking about that hype around those sardines, Matthew. But I think everyone's forgetting the sardines for those absolutely delicious Ukraines.
I'm telling you, they even know how to spell Ukraine. Are we going to take their advice on the matter? No. Why they call it Ukraine?
Sadness, indeed.
It's like the latrine, the Ukraine.
Man, they did have that Ukraine. Man, dude, I'm gonna go out to the beach and instead of putting on sunscreen, I'm gonna put on Ukraine. But anyways, moving on from that and out of the Bakmhut area, it's time for us to get down to Avdiivka because we have some very interesting clips from Avdiivka over the past 24 hours. We got to see up in the area of Krasnoarivka a decent amount of Russian assaults that have failed over the past 2 months are now littering the battlefield and snow covered, showing us a large culmination of an effective Ukrainian offense, defensive and a failed Russian offensive. Quite a lot, actually. An unbelievable amount. But moving on from that and down into the area of Avdiivka on its southern side, we also got to saw that for once, literally once, the Russians finally evacuated a wounded soldier. We rarely see this happen. This was actually quite shocking to note that they actually did evacuate a wounded soldier, so I had to show it on clip. So here it is. I'm going to mute the 1990s action music, so we're going to mute that. But when you see them throw out a smoke grenade, they actually have some planning here. And also, that's an AK-12. And that guy has an AK-12. Wait a minute. Oh, that's why. They're the naval infantry. That makes sense. So these guys actually have a little bit of planning because it's a naval infantry unit that's fighting here at the moment. And the naval infantry are one of Russia's higher-end units. It's not as high-end as the VDV or the Spetsnaz in comparison, but it's better off than your typical mechanized or motorized rifle brigade that we usually see on the front lines. And we see them running forward. And by the way, some of y'all may be wondering why I know they're naval infantry. That's because of this white flag with the blue St. Andrew's cross on it. That is the flag of the Russian naval infantry. That's also the flag of the Russian Navy. But when you see them grabbing the Russian soldier and just like dragging him across bricks, and let's see, they're running him back behind the wall. You see the area is filled with smoke from the smoke grenade. The wind blew it back into their face. See them ushering the rest of the Russians back. It appears that they're withdrawing after gathering the wounded. And they're doing a run and gun trying to get out of there. But that's the end of the clip, and literally one of the only times we've seen in the entire Battle of Avdiivka any of the wounded being evacuated that were in a hard-to-get area. But moving on from that, and down into the area of Velyka, we got to see that apparently the Russians are putting mock-ups of dead soldiers on destroyed APCs. I have to show this to y'all because this is just very confusing. I have no idea why they're doing this. Because you would think that those were Russians that, got, whacked like every other one. But they're dummies. They're fake. They're mannequins. We have no idea why they're doing this. We're kind of confused because what does the deception play into? Does it inflate Ukrainian casualty numbers or give them a false sense that there are more Russian personnel knocked out than what they actually have knocked out? We don't know what this is for. And these, they actually just did red napkins with, and so it was pretty clear to tell they were decoys, or really just fake dead Russian soldiers, but we don't know why they did this. We're completely in the dark, and if y'all have any ideas why they did this and mocked up fake dead Russian soldiers on these armored vehicles, let us know, because we're completely in the dark as to why anyone would do this. There's really no positive to this deception that I can think of.
You want your decoys to be alive, don't you? Or at least look alive.
Well, I mean, for these, it looks like they're actually trying to make them look like they're dead, but I don't know. I mean, it's weird because the vehicle's been destroyed. We can clearly see that because it's got burn marks all over it, and it also is charred. So the Ukrainians aren't going to hit it again, so why did they take the time to put decoy dead Russians on top of it? It just doesn't really add up to me, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Let's see. And you're taking my life, said, so they can tell the public that all the pictures they are seeing are just dummies like that. Maybe, but I still don't know why. Like other videos, you can clearly tell, and we can't show them on stream, but you can clearly tell that the folks have been blasted because, they've usually been like mashed to like paper thin or, something like that. This is just clearly fake. You can tell it fake from a real picture very easily, and this is just like, what's the point? I still don't, I don't get it. I can't really understand why. But moving on from that and into the next bit of news we have near Velyka, we got to see that a Russian assault did fail in the area. We can see a T-72B frozen over inside of a small frozen pond on the side of the road. We can also see a destroyed BMP-1 along with a Lada. We can also see a destroyed Scooby-Doo van, like Zoink Scoop. We can also see a destroyed Euro 4320 burned to the ground, another BMP-1 that was destroyed and lost, as well as a T-72B that was also destroyed and lost as well in another area. And we can also see a drone with some kind of an artillery shell actually attached to the bottom of it that also got knocked down as well. And that wasn't the only attack we saw fail in the area over the past 24 hours. We also saw this one. It appears that this was a T-80BV, an entirely different main battle tank than the ones we saw in the last pictures. We can also see a destroyed Russian T-72B3, once again another tank that's different from the ones in the last photo set. Another destroyed Russian T-72B3, and then finally in this last picture it appears to be a BMP-2 with a cope cage attached to the top. But overall, what we're getting from all of this is that the Russians launched two different attacks in this area over the past 24 hours, and they both failed miserably. It appears that they took very high losses, and it's showing that the Ukrainian defenses are once again holding up quite strongly, and the modicum that the defender wins in the winter is still holding up quite true, especially in this area of the battlefield. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that the 59th Brigade hit a Russian tank with an RPG-2. When you see the Ukrainian pop up with the RPG, actually it's not an RPG-2, is it? Oh my lord, I said an RPG-2, it's an RPG-7, but he fires it at the back of this Russian tank. I have no idea what happened right there, because if you watch that, watch this. Poof, he fires the RPG, something up here is fluttering around, and then it looks like the tank actually runs over an anti-tank mine, and then three of them actually, and then gets completely destroyed. And then another explosion happens over there. And we now see another Russian tank moving around. We can see a Ukrainian over here in the trench line to the right. This tank is going full speed through the field, turret backwards. And I actually don't think we can credit any of these losses here to the Ukrainian with the RPG. It looks like both of these losses were actually from TM62 anti-tank mines instead. But nevertheless, two Russian tanks lost regardless of how they were lost. With that, that's the end of that clip, and showing that even in quieter areas of the front, like near Pervomaiske and Pisky, it appears that the Russians are still taking some somewhat decent losses in the armored category. Also near Marinka, we saw the Russians attempt another assault to push out of Marinka on its northern side, and it appears that this completely failed. Also, by the way, I have to say that snow cover from video to video appears to be drastically different in just different areas of Ukraine. We're thinking that some areas of Ukraine are getting very heavy snowfall and others are just being completely missed, because a lot of the videos are being located to the exact same days. Like the one up in the area of Pervomaiske was located to today. It's not from earlier in the war. This clip also came out today, but further south in the area of, and let me make sure we get to the right area so that we can show you. Further south near Marinka, there's heavy snowfall, specifically in this little forested area right around here. However, up in the area of Pervomaiske and Pisky, near this interchange that's been destroyed, we don't see any snow, and it's from the same day, so we're thinking that the snow cover is very sporadic across Ukraine, although it is incredibly heavy in this clip. But here's the video, and by the way, just quick context, this is actually a video from a Russian soldier's helmet cam showing the battle. When you see the APC advancing, it appears that they're in the back of the BMP-3, and they're being followed up by an Mtlb. We hear the BMP-3 firing its main gun, giving suppressive fire as they continue to advance. And it sounds as though that the APC may have just been hit. The infantry are dismounting and running to cover. We hear some cracks, which sound like gunfire. It appears that the Russians are trying to figure out what to do here in this clip. We see him firing an RPG-26, I believe that was. Now whipping out an AK-12. And let's see, wait a minute, hang on. We can actually see a front view of this APC. Let's see what kind of damage it may have sustained. So it looks like whatever's hit, it's blown out the side panels on the tracks. So it may have possibly been a mine, but it wasn't strong enough an explosion to be a mine. Whatever's hit it, though, has knocked out the engine bay. Well, actually, no, correction. It wouldn't have knocked out the engine bay. The engine bay on the BMP-3 is at the back and the bottom of the infantry compartment. I don't know what's hit this thing. Apparently it was a demobilizing hit, whatever it is. And now they're trying to figure out what to do, because it seems as though the APC has been knocked out. There's no suppressing fire coming from it. It also appears that the driver's unresponsive, and there's some kind of damage visible on the front glacis. It now sounds like the Russian infantry squad is starting to lay down fire. And one thing that we're starting to note, one thing I'm going to have to say is quite clear, is that while a lot of the Russian war industry has fallen apart, it does appear that Izmash has been able to continue production of AK-12s, which is fairly basic to do. But it's still interesting to note, because we are starting to see a lot more AK-12s in the Russian Federation's armed forces than we saw at the beginning of the war. It was mostly AK-74Ns. Now we're seeing a lot of AK-12s. It's almost the only rifle we're seeing now. It seems as though the Russians are continuing to advance without the support of the BMP-3. And it looks like one of the Russians just took a nap. Let me check that again. Why, yes, that Russian just took a nap right there. So he'll be resting for a while. And we can see...
Hey, no napping on the job.
Yeah, no sleeping on the job. Absolutely ludicrous. And we see some kind of an explosion up front. We see those Russian
really, if you think about it, the Ukrainians are really advocates of workplace values and also perks, because they're trying to give the Russians that on-the-job rest.
Yeah, I guess so. It appears that as the battle is continuing, the Russians are getting more and more desperate with laying down their fire. It was more so accurate shots at the start. We're starting to see wild spraying. And we can see another Russian soldier run up to the one taking a nap and is checking on him to see if he really is taking a nap. We can hear return gunfire coming in from the whistling and whirring of the bullets flying over. We can see some Russian soldiers are continuing to attempt an advance on the Ukrainian positions. And also, we can see what appears to be a suicidal grouping of Russian soldiers in this one area. We can see 6 of them, including the cameraman. These are probably going to become an ideal target for any Ukrainian drones that are in the area, or the Ukrainian artillery that's probably being dialed in at the moment. We can see our cameraman has joined one of the squad's machine gunners with a PKP. You hear a round pretty much fly right over the both of them. And it sounds as though our machine gunner is using it as a semi-automatic. We hear a bullet still whizzing over him. And now we can hear the Ukrainian artillery being dialed in, just like we said a moment ago. The Russian soldiers immediately became a target, and a drone that was in the area is already dialing in these Russians for the artillerists. Well, you see the machine gunner finally using the machine gun like a machine gun. And the video clip ends there, but we can see that this assault that the Russians attempted at Marinka completely failed pretty much from the outset due to the loss of their BMP-3, which would have provided a decent amount of covering fire. Not only that, the Russians conducted the attack during daytime, which is usually a suicidal tactic at this point in the war on both sides, and not only that, it seems as though the Ukrainians also had advantageous defensive positions, because we could visibly see that the Russians were taking some considerable losses even after dismounting from the APC. All in all, this video concludes by showing that this Russian attack most likely had failed by the point the BMP-3 had been destroyed, and the infantry were only keeping a hope of a successful attack alive. Moving on from that, we did see that the Russians started to whip out the old tried-and-true tactic of using an Mtlb as a petardier. Many of y'all know what a petard is because we've talked about it before on this channel, but way back in the 15th and 16th centuries, there was these guys who had a specialized job. Well, they had this thing called a petard, which is a kind of a bomb, and these 4 or so guys would pick up this bomb, and they would run it towards a castle or fortification wall. They would plant it at the bottom, light the fuse, and then they'd try and run off. The Russians had brought this strategy back to life around the middle part of last year in the summer by loading up MTLBs with explosives, having a driver drive them out onto lines, set a course straight across, put a brick on the accelerator, and then hop out. So kind of bringing back the petardier in a modern form, but it doesn't appear to have worked well in this clip because the MTLB was destroyed before it made it to the Ukrainian positions. There we can see the MTLB on its way. It looks like the driver wasn't really that daring. He kept it in first gear and hopped out before it really got up to speed. And it's slowly rolling. The whole thing's filled with explosives, probably around, I would say, 4 tons of explosives is probably the best they could fit into it if it's completely full. We see the MTLB continuing on through the field at a pretty slow pace. It looks like the Ukrainians already have eyes on the MTLB and are getting ready to try and destroy it before it makes it to their position. And it's still rolling. It looks like it may have deviated off of its course a little bit as well. And I can't really tell if this is a camera of the MTLB or a camera of the drone. I would assume that this is the MTLB's camera, possibly. And we could see it get blown up by the Ukrainians before it made it to their positions. It appears that it was several hundred yards away, but the explosion is almost nuclear in scale. Not really, you know, it's an Oppenheimer-level explosion. But still, very nice to see that the Ukrainians were able to stop it before it made it to their positions. With that, that's the end of that clip, and very good to see that the Ukrainians were able to stop the thing before it got to them. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news near the direction of Izherne, we got to see that the kamikaze drone was used to hit some Ruski soldat. Have you ever wanted to watch the Russians get their ass beat with some epic music? Well, you, my friend.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. But anyways, when you see the FPV drones hitting just about everything down here, including this knocked out BMP-2. Is it a BMP-2M? Nah, it's not. It's BMP-2. Right into the engine bay.
Have you ever wanted to see Moon Planet? Well, now you see it up close. FPV.
Have you ever wanted to see a brigade's unit emblem made in Microsoft Paint? Well, you, my friend, are in luck. Introducing the 63rd Brigade. That's the only one who had their card made in Adobe Paint, or more so Microsoft Paint, or whatever the hell you're
Adobe Paint.
Man, we got that Adobe. Did you get that Adobe Paint? That's the end of that clip.
Moon Planet.
Hey, Love to see it. Moon planet, baby. Moon planet. But moving on from that, we didn't really get a lot of news from the Zaporizhzhia front. However, we did get a decent amount of news from down here near the Aleski Sands, and specifically near Krynky. We got to see that the Ukrainians are still holding a very effective defense of Krynky, and in fact, from what we can tell, they're now trying to conduct an offensive into the forest further south of Krynky. This is probably the only area that the Ukrainians will have any actual success in an offensive, because they're an entirely infantry-based force on this side of the river, and the forest will provide enough cover for them to advance without having to be in fear of tank support for the Russians. It does seem, though, that the Russians are trying to move tanks into the forest and also trying to use TOS-1 thermobaric systems to hit Krynky as much as they can, rolling up the heavy artillery to try and deal with this Ukrainian advance through the forest. Madiar was able to show us that the TOS got destroyed. Here's the clip. There's the TOS down there firing off its thermobarics, and it got blown up.
Boom.
Oh, wait a minute, what did he say? Hold up. Hold up. No! Man, Madiar's going crazy, man. But, anyways, that TOS blown up. We also saw that the Russians pulled out even bigger guns, and they dropped a Fab 500, a 500-kilogram bomb, into the middle of Krynky today to try and deal with the Ukrainians. There we can see the bomb exploding. Pretty damn big, actually. But apparently, actually, we can see multiple Fab 500s exploding onto the village. And also, based off of that little building there, we can actually geolocate where they dropped those bombs. And it would have been... Let me make sure that we're not ruling anything out. So we made it all the way down to Kasachi Lahari. Let me go north. Let me scan this part of the town. So we got a compound like that right there. But this is towards the road. So we got a... This is it. Yep. And there's the little forest. So it appears that these Fab 500s all blew up around right here near the Krynka River, which is what Krynky's named after. The Ukrainians do control the entirety of the village from the western side to the eastern side. So these Fab 500s, while pretty much destroying these two blocks that it hit, probably didn't cause that much damage to the Ukrainian defenders and also the Ukrainian offensive that's being pushed from Krynky itself. But nevertheless, moving on from that, we can see that the Russians are starting to pull out even heavier firepower in the TOS thermobaric and the Fab 500s, trying to wipe out these Ukrainian forces because they do pose a large threat to the Russian garrison that is currently holding Aleski and stopping it for the Ukrainian advance across the Dnipro River. Moving on from that, we also saw that the Ukrainian counter battery was once again destroying Uragans behind the lines near Krishchiivka today, which is on the southern end of the Aleski Sands. We can see that Uragan right there, and also a support vehicle over here. The Ukrainians are getting this thing as a target. We can see its resupply vehicles. There's one of them. There's the second one. We can also see that they found a, wait a minute, a friend. Wait a minute, is that what they called it? Druga. Yeah, why in the world are they calling it a friend? I don't know. But they found the friend, apparently. It must be another grad. Or Uragan, more so. We see another Uragan. It's an entire Uragan battery down here in this area. Let's see. That is a Triti. I don't know what that is. But we can see one of the Uragans slowly rolling. Oh man, this drone is high up. It's looking through the freaky clouds. I've never seen a drone this high before.
Or is that just smoke?
No, that's clouds, man. That's clouds. Yeah, that's clouds. Oh my lord,
Oh,
how
dang.
high up is this thing?
This is like almost like one of those weather balloons or something, like floating, like the Chinese spy balloon.
You Chinese. But anyways, we can see them hitting their Uragans down there in those fields. Ooh. Dead on hit to one of the Uragans. We can see it cooking up. Ooh. A little bit of a pop-off there. Hey, pop-off, pop-off. Oh! Again?
Just like the vodka.
Ooh. and we see the Uragan burned out and destroyed, along with its loading vehicles as well. And that's a great sign, because the loading vehicles are some of the most important ones. They're actually fewer in number than the launchers themselves. We also saw that the Russians were launching attacks on the city of Kherson, and we got to see the anti-air missile brigade in the city of Kherson working to shoot down these incoming drones. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there. But really quickly, I wanted to bring y'all's attention to something that is a clear attempt to try and divide support for Ukraine and support for American interest. I just saw a bot that Matthew deleted, and usually I actually don't bring up bots anymore. Matthew just bans them, and we kind of don't even bring them up. But this one was very interesting to me, because you can tell that this one is an attempt to start dividing people. And here's what they said. I'm going to censor a little bit of it. But they said, now that supporting Ukraine is clearly only one party thing, the other party cannot be a part of it whatsoever. How are you going to keep on pretending you can keep the show non-political? I don't know if anyone could see this, but that is a clear bait to try and get about half of all the people who support Ukraine to stop supporting Ukraine by dividing up the base. And that's what people like the Russians and the Chinese are always working on here in the United States, is trying to divide people off of minor differences that don't really mean much. I'm sure that many of y'all here right now in this chat are of different political mindsets. We don't ever talk about it on this channel, and it's a rule we don't talk about politics. But I will bet you money that we have people in here right now who are from one party and one people who are from another. And one people who vote one way and one people who vote another. And funnily enough, y'all are all here doing the exact same thing right now. And all of those differences that y'all think y'all have, y'all really don't have. Every single one of y'all are united under the same common cause. People like that guy right there are nothing more than the plants that are sent in by the Chinese and the Russians to try and divide support for Ukraine and make sure that their interests will win out by the end of the day. That's what they're doing. And I think it's always important to note that, because there are a lot of well-do wishers out there that sit there and talk about, oh, I'm pro-Ukrainian, but we need to go and kick these pro-Ukrainians in the teeth because I don't like their other things that they agree with on a level like that. And that is absolutely ludicrous. That's stupid, and that's how you end up killing support for Ukraine. I've got to tell y'all, whenever I see stuff like that, it's so see-through to me, and it's so pig-headed and so selfish to go, my political views are so important, I'm going to put America's strategic interests on the very bottom rung for what I think exists out there. And in fact, I'm going to gatekeep a war, a war where people are dying. If you want to look at it that way, it's a war where at least 200 Ukrainian soldiers are dying every day at this point. I'm going to put them below my own selfish personal interests, and I'm going to start fighting with other Ukraine war supporters just because I can. That is lame. And I'll tell you this, no one in the Lee Spring Army should ever be doing that. The Lee Spring Army does not care what you think outside of Ukraine. You could be, hell, you could be anything you want to be. You could be anyone you want to be. And it does not matter. The Lee Spring Army is united around a singular goal, supporting Ukraine. If you are a person who supports Ukraine, I do not care who you are. You're a friend of ours, and you will always be a member of the Lee Spring Army. Don't ever listen to people who say that kind of stuff, because the only thing they want to do is make sure that there are less supporters of Ukraine by the end of this day. And they will not win. And so with that, we're now moving on from that little bit of news and on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on this day of the war. And so with that, here's the peach. And let me make sure to close that off, and let me make sure to get the subtitle. Oh no, dude, I'm lucky I caught it, because they had the hello, fellow Ukrainians. But here's the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Короткий підсумок цього дня. Перше, продовжуємо нашу нову традицію вшанування героїв України. Кожен, хто був удостоєний звання, обов'язково має отримати від держави квартиру. Ми започаткували цю традицію на День Збройних сил України. Сьогодні продовжили. Я мав честь передати рідним героїв золоті зірки, ордени, якими воїни були відзначені посмертно. Вручив і сертифікати на квартири. Ще 27 наших героїв отримали житло. Солдати, матроси, сержанти, офіцери. Точно так само отримують і інші. Кожен Герой України. Загалом за час повномасштабної війни і по сьогодні вже 362 людини відзначені цим званням. Це воїни і Збройних сил, і Національної гвардії, і Національної поліції, і ГУР, і СБУ та інших елементів сил оборони та безпеки. Друге за сьогодні. Провів доволі тривалу та змістовну нараду з урядовцями щодо нашої роботи з Євросоюзом заради продовження фінансової підтримки України на достатньому рівні на наступні 4 роки. Був глава уряду, перша віце-прем'єр-міністр, міністри. Обговорили деталі, конкретні рішення, яких потребуємо. Максимально активно працюємо, щоб гарантувати стабільність нашій державі та стійкість в усіх її інституціях, в усіх системах та функціях держави. І це буде. Я вдячний усім, хто допомагає. Я вдячний усім, хто робить забезпечення наших державних інтересів не тільки справедливим, але й детально пропрацьованим. Важлива міжнародна розмова з генеральним секретарем ООН Гутеррішем. Тематика щодо безпеки. Безпеки судноплавства у Чорному морі. Зокрема, щодо розширення цієї безпеки, а отже і зміцнення глобальної продовольчої безпеки. Та наближення того моменту, коли ми зможемо повернути безпеку усім нашим людям. Коли зможемо завершити російську агресію. Завершити чесно, я запросив представника Організації Об'єднаних Націй на нову зустріч радників з реалізації формули миру. Це зустріч, яку ми зараз готуємо, вона буде вже 4-ю. Поступово, крок за кроком, ми наповнюємо згодою світової більшості зміст кожного з 10 пунктів формули миру. Ще одне, зараз у передріздвяний час усім в нашій державі варто пам'ятати, що цей час для зосередженості, час для роботи, час для того, щоб мати можливість розслабитись потім. Харківщина та Луганщина, Донеччина та Запоріжжя, Херсонщина та кожен інший наш регіон, де зараз вирішується доля держави. Нашими воїнами, усім нашим народом. Максимальна увага, захист, максимальні зусилля заради держави, максимальна енергія заради того, щоб Україна могла досягти і досягала своїх цілей. Я дякую усім, хто живе саме так, хто б'ється і працює заради України. Сьогодні ж була окрема доповідь ГУР, плани ворога, робота російської оборонки і є сигнали щодо їхнього уповільнення. Будемо їхньому уповільненню ще допомагати. Віримо в наші сили і щодня додаємо сили Україні. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on this day of the war, and it's now time for us to move on into the next part of this stream, which is going to be incredibly fun. We get to talk to all of y'all about everything y'all been speaking about in the live chat for about the next 40 minutes or so. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and y'all know what time it is. It's time for our final question and poll segment. And our first poll of the last segment says, some in the U.S. believe that Ukraine aid can be replaced by the liquidation of Russian assets. And what are your thoughts? 44% said that could work as a replacement. 37% said it will only supplement aid. 11% said I need more info first. And 7% said unsure. And I don't really think that the liquidation of Russian assets will ever really fully replace U.S. aid and also European aid as well. I think it'll only supplement it. And also, even beyond that point, it doesn't seem that countries can even agree on how to actually liquidate the Russian assets anyway. So, you know, between nobody being able to agree on aid and also the legislation around the liquidation of assets, it seems like there's just an all-around holdup. Nobody can really make up their minds or come to an agreement to get anything done. It seems like that should change pretty quickly because lives are at stake. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it probably would be a smart move to start liquidating Russian assets to start funding the war in Ukraine. Of course, I think that hopefully there will be some support for Ukraine in the future. Hopefully everyone will come around to understanding it's not specifically about, you know, other things, more so about America's strategic interest against the Russians and the Chinese in the long game. But beyond that at the moment, I think that would be a good way to try and fund the Ukrainian war effort. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says, why would the Russians want to place dead soldier mock-ups on the battlefield? 34% said to misdirect the Ukrainian forces. 27% said to put doubt in casualty numbers. 20% said unsure, undecided, or other, and 19% said to carry out some type of psyop. And on this one, I got to tell you, I'm really still confused about why they would have done that, because to me, it seems like the dummies would need to look alive or something like that to actually misdirect the Ukrainians. So why would the Ukrainians focus on hitting dead ones, because they're already allegedly dead? That doesn't make any sense, but, don't put anything past the Russians. They are pretty stupid. So I would have to say that maybe they're trying to put doubt in the casualty numbers. Maybe they're putting the dummies out there to say, hey, look, the Ukrainians did that. They threw the dummies out in the field, and they're trying to make it seem like we're losing more soldiers than we actually are. Maybe that's one thing, but even at that, that's even a stretch. So maybe the Russians are just being stupid. Maybe they're playing a prank on each other. I don't know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that, to me at least, I don't know what they are doing with that. I still have no clue. I've been raking my brain in the middle of Zelensky's speech going, why in the world would they do something like that? I still have no idea. It just doesn't really benefit them in any way at all. So, to be honest with you, I'd still have to declare ignorance on it. I just wouldn't know. I'm about as ignorant and stupid as they come. But still, not as ignorant and stupid as Chris's mom. But with that, we are now on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we're now moving into our super chat questions once again, because we're all out of polls, and the first one is going to go to Sinful J, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Sinful J, for that support. And he says, LSA, LSA, LSA.
And LSA, LSA, LSA. And thank you so much for the support, Sinful J. And thank you for helping this channel to keep running. You were the first super chat to come in tonight, and I got to thank you for being a supporter of this channel and helping us to make this thing possible and keep it running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Sinful J, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. Of course, viewer support is the only thing that keeps us rolling, and I've got to thank you all so much once again for making it possible for us to keep this channel rolling. If it wasn't for folks like you, Sinful J, and Walter A. Lakota, and Enforce for President, and everyone who's been here tonight supporting the channel, everyone who's been in the past supporting the channel, we wouldn't have been able to be on air as long as we have been. We'll always stay on air as long as we can, even if viewer support completely stopped. We probably would be able to do this for about another 2 months or so. But I got to thank you all so much once again, because y'all helped the Elite Spring Army and the Enforcer channel to keep on running like a well-oiled machine thanks to y'all support. Y'all allow us to focus almost all of our time and every day onto this channel, making sure that we continue to put out this news and continuing to make sure the support for Ukraine stays high. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, huge shout out to Keymaster, throws in a $20 donation, along with George Tencher, who threw in a 10. And sadly, neither one left to comment, but they left super stickers of the YouTube creature doing those narcissistic things and habits. But thank you very much, Keymaster, for the support, and also George as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much, Master of the Keys, for the support. I also love that Shiba Inu doing the #1 thing. Very cute. I love it. And thank you so much, Keymaster, for helping this channel to keep running. Of course, no comment, but there doesn't have to be a comment every time. It's just nice to always get to talk to y'all and get to chit-chat with y'all when y'all support the channel, and hopefully that serves as a great thanks. But beyond that, I had to thank you so much for the support, because you're making it possible for us to be on air. And also, I have to thank you, George Tencher, for being a #1 fan, as the pair says, because I respect #1 fans, and every fan of the Lee Spring Army is a #1 fan. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you to both of y'all so much once again, and long live the Lee Spring Army.
And long live the LSA. And up next, we have a 20 Canadian donation from Rob Horvath, who says, on average, how many bots do you SWAT a night? And I'll be honest with you, typically over the last few weeks, I haven't been swatting bots like I usually do. It's maybe about 5 a night at the most. Back in the day, maybe a couple months back, it was maybe, I don't know, 25 to 35 bots a night. But tonight is an anomaly. I don't know what's happened, but they're flooding in. And I've swatted maybe about 15 to 20 tonight, which is a big number compared to usual. So something's got them stirred up. Now, they must be losing again really badly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I'll tell you what's got them stirred up, Matthew. The viewership of the stream tonight has been unbelievable. Before the second hour is even rounded out, we've gotten up to 22,000 views. Usually we get around 19,000 views by the time the stream ends about 2.5 to 3 hours in. So we have been getting a lot of viewers tonight, and that of course draws in the crazies and the bots. And so we've been swatting them like crazy tonight, and we love to do it. It's showing us that we are having an impact, because for the Russian bots to show up and do their thing, you know we've got to be doing something good. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again, Rob, for asking a very interesting question. Because I swatted one myself tonight. I got one. I got him, old boy. I got him. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again, Rob, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we were able to answer that question well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Historic Tasmanian, who throws in a $15 donation, and thank you very much as well for that support. They said, Merry Christmas, Matt and Enforcer, and thanks for all you do for our land.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And not only that, thank you for enjoying what we've been doing to try and help out as much as possible in Ukraine. It is a massive strategic interest for the United States. It's a massive interest for the Ukrainians to remain a sovereign nation. It's a massive interest for the Europeans to make sure that the Russians don't try and further encroach into the European Union and NATO as a whole. It's a massive interest for everyone. And I got to thank you so much, Historic Tasmanian, for the support and thanking us for what we've been doing covering this news and trying to make sure that support stays high. Not only that, I also want to wish you a Merry Christmas as well, Historic Tasmanian. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas down there in the land down under. And I also have to thank you so much once again for being one of those channel legends who've been here forever. And thank you so much once again for supporting this channel tonight. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Quantum Fighter. And he said, a little something. You always crack me up. And this is for the chuckles, all the chuckles, and all the great reporting. And keep it up. Slava Ukraine. And what's happening at the Zaporizhzhia power plant these days? And also take a live chat question, please. And Black Flag.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support, Quantum Fighter. And thank you for enjoying the channel. And thank you for saying we crack you up. We always try. I gotta be honest, the jokes kind of have... I feel like my jokes have kind of worn off lately, where I hardly do jokes, because I'm kind of starting to run out of jokes. You know, you do all the jokes you can over 2 years. I feel like 2 years of jokes was a pretty good run, but I'm still trying to come up with new ones. And if any of y'all want to ever help us out, just throw up a joke in the live chat on whatever we're covering, and I might cover it. I might even read it off. Also, on top of that, thank you so much for enjoying our reporting. We try our best to get it out as best as possible every day. Sometimes we'll miss the mark here and there, but nevertheless, I do thank you for appreciating it, regardless of, you know, how accurate it was. We try and make it as accurate as possible. I'd say it's like 95% accurate nightly. And also, what's happening at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant? Not much. How do I cover this? I know some people are going to say, but the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense didn't know this, but I mean, they did.
It was overblown.
It's the Ukrainian intelligence sphere, but it was way overblown, because they've been getting water out of the ground wells, and also they're still apparently connected to the depleted reservoir in the area, and they still have water. The entire thing that happened earlier this year, where everyone was talking about the nuclear power plant was going to have a meltdown and it was going to blow up, apparently was a complete fabrication, because it never happened. And the reservoir has not filled up again ever. It's actually lower now than it has been because of winter. It's as low as it could ever be, and the power plant is still running just fine. I know that a lot of people don't like me to, you know, every once in a while give a hit to anything in Ukraine, but Budanov completely missed the mark on this thing, because he was the one out there going, it's going to blow up, and we took it at face value when he was saying it. And then he says, it's going to blow up within the next 12 hours, and then it didn't. And now we're 8 months later down the road, and we're not even hearing the IAEA even bring up a mention of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant anymore, or anything happening near it. So, unfortunately, that would have been misreporting on our end due to misinformation that was put out by the Ukrainian intelligence sector through Budanov. So, with that, I hope that does address that well. And you know, and of course, some people are going to be like, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to be as honest with y'all as I possibly can be, even to the point of brutal honesty. And to be honest with y'all, the way that was so over-reported and misrepresented, it really gave a massive mark to us when we try and report on anything from the Ukrainian intelligence sphere, because that was so inaccurate. It was blatantly inaccurate from what we can tell. And so, you know, at this point, we we don't even really take Ukrainian intelligence at face value when we say anything. We'd rather go with the British Ministry of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense even, which hasn't really gotten a lot of things accurate throughout the war on their public reports. I see some people, let's see here, some people saying the boy that cried meltdown, love the honesty and BS free news. And oh, wait a minute, our stream just died. Oh,
yeah,
my
I just
Lord.
totally went out for a minute. I was sitting over here going, hello? Hey, hello?
Oh, hello there. But it looks like we're supposedly back. So I thank you everyone for enjoying the honesty, because we try and be as honest as possible in the situation. Of course, positive about Ukraine, regardless of what's going on. We always try and be an optimist about the war for the Ukrainian side. But when stuff like that happens, it honestly, I've got to be honest with y'all, I put a lot of credit and a lot of faith into what we report on this channel. It pissed me off that we were misguided that much by Ukrainian intelligence that one time with the power plant. Because, it's like, what the hell were y'all thinking? It's like there wasn't even any, like 8 months later, clearly nothing was going to melt down, because it's 8 months later and nothing ever happened. And that just aggravated the hell out of me, because we put a lot of credit and a lot of time, and I put a lot of effort into geolocating these clips and making sure that the news we put out is as accurate as it can damn well be. And, up until that point, we just took the Ukrainian intelligence at face value, and that was just completely wrong. Honestly, if I was the president of Ukraine, considering how wrong those statements were from the Ukrainian intelligence, I honestly would demand Budanov's resignation. That's what I would do. But I'm not the president of Ukraine, and, that may be possibly an overreaction, but I consider things like that, especially on our end, news reporting-wise, a very serious discrepancy. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, another thing that aggravated me a lot is that we were reporting on that, and it, like Angry Penguin said, he said it caused a lot of serious anxiety. People were damn well terrified around the world, because we thought that it was going to be Chernobyl times 4. And it wasn't even going to happen, and that's just what pissed me off, because we've always been optimists about the war, and we've always tried to make sure that things don't sound as bad as they are, even sometimes when it deserves it. And then this guy sits there and says stuff, and we put it out, and hundreds of thousands of people watch those videos. I think one of our most viewed videos about it got 250,000 views, and we just fed into all of this fear for no reason. I mean, to me, that just aggravates me on to a whole other level. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and I don't mean to just vent on y'all about how aggravated I was about that, but that's why y'all have heard nothing about it, and that's probably why we're never going to cover it again. They tell us at this point it's going to blow up tomorrow, and I probably wouldn't cover it, because they gave us enough doubt the first time that I probably wouldn't, cry meltdown the second time. But with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Siri, who throws in a $10 donation and says, Happy Winter Solstice, Enforcer Brothers, and also happy one to you as well, Siri.
Hey.
They said, did you know as of today that only 14 countries have laws that give women the same rights as the men, and women make up about 20% of UAF? Big ups to them. An XO from Oslo.
And I thank you so much for the support and being one of our Norwegian viewers. Also, pretty interesting to hear that 20% of the Ukrainian armed forces are women. That's actually pretty impressive by the statistics. I think it's something like the U.S. military, around 10% to 14% of the armed forces are women. So Ukraine's doing pretty good there, gotta say. Also, pretty interesting to hear about the women having the same rights as men in only 14 countries. Pretty interesting fact. I'll have to look into that after the stream, but still, thank you so much once again, Siri, for the support and being one of our Norwegian viewers of the Lee Spring Army, because y'all add a lot of extra cultural flavor. I gotta say, cultural flavor is something that's not lost in the Lee Spring Army. There are viewers from Japan, India, Norway, Poland, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. There are viewers of the LSA from there, and y'all add a great deal culturally to this channel. I gotta thank you for being one of those Norwegian viewers. And with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Harvey the drummer yet again, who throws in a $10 donation. And he says, any more info on the cyber attack, and could explain the increased bots tonight. And when I was a kid, we had B-Day parties at skating rinks in the 90s. And John Cicada's Just Another Day was a staple and a banger.
Man, that thing was a banger. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And to answer your question, there has not really been a lot of info on the cyber attacks. And we also haven't heard about like an increased bot activity. Let's see here. And interesting to hear about what y'all did in the 90s. When I have a birthday, like all my birthdays growing up, I would come home, we would have a cake, and we would hang out around the house, and I'd watch a movie. And that was like the huge thing of a birthday. I never went to a skating rink. I don't even know what roller skating really is. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Harvey. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I saw that Walter A. Lakota said something in the chat. He said, "Tell the enforcer that's also how come you don't see the intelligence chief in the news anymore. It's probably because of that blunder last year." And I would agree. I think because you don't really hear a lot about Budanov. Budanov was really growing as a popular figure in the news, and then he disappeared after that. Although he's still there as the intelligence chief. I've got to be honest with you. Like, and I know some people are going to be like, well, you know, maybe him saying that detracted them from doing what they were doing. If that was true, if the Ukrainians blew the whistle on something, the Russians wouldn't do it. Then how come he blew the whistle nonstop on the Novokakhovka power plant, the dam, going to be blown up, and then the Russians blew it up anyways? If that was how it worked, that means that the dam wouldn't have been blown up either. But the dam got blown up, and the nuclear reactor didn't melt down. And that tells me that this guy is going out there hitting and missing. He's just saying stuff without any information. Like the power plant, the dam did blow up, so that was a correct statement. But then he went and did the exact same thing after the dam blew up to the power plant. Literally, once the dam blew up, he immediately moved to the power plant and said, "They're going to blow it up. They're going to blow it up. They're going to blow it up. It's blowing up any day now. We're all going to die. It's going to be radiation hellhole. Everyone's dead. Every child miscarriage. You know what, woman? You think you're having a great life? Guess what? Breast cancer." You know, like he was going around doing that for like 3 weeks, and it was completely false. Like, you know, there was no backup to it at all. And the IAEA would go there, and they go, "We don't see anything." And then you go, "They don't see it because the Russians hit it. They put it right back on the roof. It's all going to blow up." And, you know, and it's like, yeah, like I get it to a point, but at the same time, it's one of those things that will make you question, at least to me, Ukrainian intelligence forever. It's like when the CIA went to Iraq and they said they have yellow cake uranium, and then we invaded Iraq in 2003 to get rid of weapons of mass destruction that never existed because the information was false. It's misinformation on that level. And I feel like misinformation on that level is so egregious, it puts a mark against that organization practically permanently, at least to me.
But wasn't Zelensky briefed on it, and he kind of repeated it over and over and over after he was told about it?
Yes, he did. But as far as that goes, the blame still goes to Budanov, because Zelensky was probably taking Budanov's statements at face value, probably like we were, and we were also repeating it as well, because everyone was just believing Budanov was right on the dam, so clearly he's got to be right on the power plant too, and it turns out he wasn't. So, you know, that's, you know, I can't really blame Zelensky for it. We did the same thing, but it's just annoyed the hell out of me, because like with the CIA, you know, because of the whole yellow cake uranium thing in Iraq, you can't always trust everything that the CIA puts out if they put out anything publicly. And now you can't trust the Ukrainian intelligence either when they put out anything publicly, because that was just blatantly false. And we're here 8 months later, a testament that the power plant never blew up. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least how I'm seeing it. And I would agree with you, Walter. I think that's why he disappeared from the news sphere. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Taggy Abiri, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much. It says, "Just wake up early enough to fetch the end of the live chat, but have to see the video as usual later on, and greetings from Basel, Switzerland."
Hey, we got a Swiss viewer. Oh, love it. And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for being from one of the neatest and most unique countries in Europe, Switzerland. Really cool place. And also, what town are you from? Basel, Switzerland. There it is. Oh, dude, it's the town right on the French-German border. What a cool town. Here's Germany over here, and here's France over here, and then here's Switzerland. Isn't that cool?
That is pretty cool, I gotta say.
Let's go look at the pictures of Basel, because we got a little bit of time. We got a little... Oh, dude, this place is beautiful. Look at that.
That is beautiful, I gotta
Man,
say.
how nice. You know, I would love to go...
Looks expensive.
Oh, it does. It looks real expensive. Like, I would love to go to Switzerland one day. I really would. I would love to travel all of Europe. But what a... Wow, look at these skies. Dude, this place is really kicking it. Like, both in the traditional architecture and even in the modern architecture. Really something. I would love to visit Switzerland one day. Maybe one day we'll be able to visit your city, but it will have to be after the war because we always want to make sure that we put the coverage for Ukraine first and then everything else second. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much for being here, even if it's the later part of the stream. Really cool to know that we have Swiss viewers here right now, and also really nice to see your beautiful little town straddling the French-German border. Just so neat. And Angry Penguin said it perfectly. It looks just like a painting. Also, thank you for being one of the LSA members. I hope you do go back and watch the stream. It's been a very good one tonight. Very interesting one as far as the news went. And also, by the way, I gotta ask, and you can answer this in the live chat. I'll just read it off. But is the Rhine River, like, is it even, like, swimmable at this point? Because it hasn't taken its full course. And I think its entire run, it's been through Switzerland for the most part at that point when it gets to y'all. Is it still, like, swimmable in, or is it too toxic already? Because I know that way down, I think it's like in Cologne, or Cologne, whatever you want to call it, way down here, I think it's completely, like, you can't even touch the water from the Rhine River at that point. It's just so toxic. But I would love to know, is it still swimmable? Because it looks so blue. Like, look at it on the satellite image, man. This thing is like ice tub blue, like bathwater blue.
It's so blue, they call it the Rhine River. Even the water, oh my goodness, man, it turned nasty, like right there on the little spot right there. It turned dark.
Oh, I think I know
Right
why.
next to that dirty plant.
Yeah, right next to the oil silos. It looks like it turned a little dirty. I think that's just a satellite, like, having a different lens or maybe different lighting. But then it changes back down here to, like, kind of like a greenish blue color. Interesting. Maybe they were taking it different times of the year. Maybe this is when, like, all the glacial water was, you know, melting and it was making its way down the Rhine and it was very blue then. But when this satellite picture was taken, it was like the summer and there wasn't a lot of glacial water. I wonder. I'm very curious about this. Let us know because I'm so interested about that. But anyways, with that, thank you so much once again for support, Tagi, and thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and also letting me oogle about Switzerland. This is a really neat place. But with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And next up, shout out to Pastel Del Mar, who puts in a $2 donation without a comment, and thank you very much, Pastel, for helping to keep us running. And also shout out to Panama Floyd, who puts in a $20 donation. And it's good to see you once again, Panama. He says, LSA, I'm sorry I'm late. I was catching up on the phone with an old college sweetheart. He says in parentheses, there are possibilities. He said, take a question from the chat. I can go back and play the news later.
Oh, and thank you so much for the support, Panama Floyd. And thank you for throwing in some support and helping the channel to roll. Also, perfectly fine that you're late. Better late than never, you know what they say. And also, there are always possibilities, Panama. You chase them, you chase them. And also, we will make sure to grab a question from the chat, but great to see you again in the super chats, and thank you for helping this channel to keep running. I remember way back in the day, it was almost like every other super chat was from you, Panama, and it's great to see you in the super chats again. We see you in the live chat often, and it's always great to have a channel legend around in the live chat, in the super chats, wherever you are. We are happy to have you, and we're going to make sure to get that live chat right now. And so what do we got, Matthew?
In the live chat goes to JC the Music Man, who says, how do we know that his bringing their potential false flag to light actually didn't prevent Russia from doing it?
Here's why. We have a prior precedent literally made just 2 months before Budanov went mental. And that was with the Novokakhovka Dam. When that was happening, Budanov was they're going to blow up the dam. They got bombs on it. It's going to blow up any day now. It's going to be a damn disaster. Everyone's going to die. And we were all like, yeah, you know, it's a little bit of a stretch. The Russians obviously wouldn't be criminal enough to go blow up a dam like that. And then they did in the middle of early June. It was like June 7th that they blew up the dam. And then we were like, oh my God, like he was right. Like the Russians will do crazy stuff like that. And, you know, he had been warning about it, and it didn't stop the Russians from blowing it up. He had been talking about that at least since, like, November of 2022, 8 months earlier, and then they blew it up. And so all the bells and whistles he was sending off did not stop the Russians from blowing up that dam. And the Russians really didn't get any consequences from doing that either. There was no real strong international response against that. It just kind of was what it was. Everyone just went, oh, wow, what a disaster. And then everyone moved on. So there was no consequence to what they did there. Then, when he started doing that against the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, everyone was like, okay, now he's got a precedent. He's not just saying stuff. he's actually dead on the money because the dam got blown up, and he was talking about that for 8 months. So this has got to be blowing up sometime soon because he said it would. And then the IAEA believed him and fed into that. And then Zelensky believed him and fed into that. And then we believed him and fed into that. Everybody believed the guy. But the thing is that it didn't blow up. And 8 months later, it still didn't blow up. And we know that if the Russians were going to blow it up, no matter how many bells and whistles this guy was going to send off, they would have just blown it up. They did it with the dam. And so that's why I believe the power plant was never going to blow up at this point. Because, you know, he warned about the dam. It didn't stop the Russians from doing it. He warns about the power plant. The Russians don't do it. So, you know, clearly there's some kind of a break in the logic in like an assertion like that, because if the warnings did stop it, the warnings would have stopped the dam from being blown up too. So that's kind of the logic I'm working off of. Tell me if it makes sense or not, because, you know, so to some people it may make sense, to some people it may not. But we already had a good running precedent that if this guy warned about something, it wasn't going to stop the Russians from doing it. He was just giving everyone a bit of a heads up at that point. But with that, I hope that does address that live chat very well. And thank you so much, Panama Floyd, for sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you, Sarge, very much.
Hey!
He says, "Evening, gents. And tonight on Map Adventures, let's take a look at the Jupiter Inlet in Jupiter, Florida. It's where I went fishing today, and what a great view."
Jupiter Inlet in Florida. Where is this? This is just north of West Palm Beach. Hey, let's get it, baby!
Oh, so expensive. I'm telling you, everybody's picking the expensive places tonight.
And this is the map of GTA 6. But nevertheless, moving on from that, here's the Jupiter Inlet. Let's take a look at this place.
You heard, by the way, the guy that had done some hacking or something around GTA 6, he just got sentenced to life in a hospital for hacking the GTA servers or something.
Like in real life?
Yeah, for real. Like, they locked him up because apparently they were saying something about he had a mental illness or condition or something, and he was a little bit nutty. So they said lock him up in the hospital for life. So apparently that's where he's at, based on what I read.
Wait a minute, like, if there was like no due process or anything, they just put him in a hospital? Like, what's going on with that?
I don't think he was here in the U.S. because I don't think that would fly. I don't even think you can lock someone up in the hospital permanently in the U.S. I think you can lock them up in like a mental facility, but not like the hospital.
Doesn't that seem a little overkill to give someone life in confinement for doing something like that?
I had read, and this is all based on what I read, so it could be wrong, but they said that he was super motivated to keep doing it again for some reason, the hacking into GTA servers, get information. It sounded kind of whack, like, to be honest, the way the article was written, but I saw other people saying the same thing, so I'm like, apparently this isn't a joke or something. Apparently they're serious.
I'm not going to lie to y'all. Wherever that guy lives, that's got to be a damn well terrible place to put someone in life in a hospital for hacking into GTA. You know, it's like I get it if it was like a national bank or something, but what the hell? Like, that just sounds crazy. But anyways, moving on back into what LSA Sergeant Figment wanted us to look at, which is the Jupiter Inlet. This actually is kind of nice. It kind of reminds me, Matthew, of like the Destin, Florida area. You know, it looks the same.
Yeah, it kind of does. A little bit.
Actually, you know what? Nah, this is nicer.
Nah.
Yeah, this is nicer looking, I think. And also, I like that little place over there, where whatever that is. But nevertheless, I hope you had a fun time.
Is that Mar-a-Lago?
Mar-a-Lago. But I don't think so. Let's go across there and check. Nah. Oh, this is a really nice neighborhood. That's what it is. Oh, we can go over there. What kind of house do you got? Oh, we can't even see. How sad, man. Because this. Oh wait, we can see here. Ooh, dude, this is nice. Wow. Nice little yard in the
That's got to be at least 30 mil for that.
30 million. Yeah, I was about to say 30 million at least. And it's a dead end, baby. It's a dead end. You go down this road, you're going into endless amounts of debt. Dead end is what they call it. But nevertheless, really cool to know that you went fishing here today. I hope you had a great time. And not only that, I hope you caught some good fish from this Loxahatchee River, if that's what it's called. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make it possible. And not only that, you are one of our IDF veterans in the chat, which is also really cool to know as well. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have an absolutely massive 200 Australian donation from Duncan McIntosh. And that is extremely generous support. And thank you very much, Duncan, for helping to keep this channel running big league. And he says, Merry Christmas or Merry Xmas. He says, I'm still working and will reply stream later. And Happy New Year. And Happy New Year to you, Duncan. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. Ho, ho, ho.
That's it, but still, thank you so much for the massive amount of support, Duncan. And Merry Christmas to you as well. And thank you for the huge amount of support and helping this stream to keep running and helping us to have a Christmas as well. It's Christmas, baby! And you're helping me to get Matthew a Christmas present. He's already gotten it. I just haven't told him. Oh, by the way, you just heard Matthew, like you just heard right there. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again, Duncan, for helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to look forward to your reply, if it's in the comments section after this thing becomes a video. But Happy New Year to you as well, Duncan. Why would I almost call you Douglas? I saw Duncan McIntosh and it translated to Douglas for me. But nevertheless, thank you so much for the huge support. It means a great deal to us. We are flattered that you would support this channel so greatly. And we will make sure to reply to your reply later. And also, one more thing. Let me check this. Let me check. Oh, let me see. And if you want, Duncan, you could go to our Patreon because we would probably be able to respond to you there quite easily. Or you could DM us on Twitter because we can also respond there too. Just let us know if your account name's different. That is Duncan McIntosh. But nevertheless, Happy New Year to you, Merry Christmas, and thank you for the massive support. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we're moving on to our live chat questions. We are fresh out of Super Chats. So, of course, up first, we had the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and David Millsaps. And they said tonight's Morse code cipher is March on LSA, and let's keep the flags high until we see the victory. Long live the LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And you all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night here on this interesting day of the war. And so I got to thank you all so much for getting that correct for so many days of the war. It's so many days. It's an incredible amount of days. Less than 667, more than 665. But nevertheless, thank y'all for getting it right again. And with that, oh, you're taking my live set. That means he was going to replay the stream later. Oh, I didn't know. I thought you immediately went back and started watching it from the start right there. But with that, thank y'all for getting the Morse code message correct. And with that, we're going to be able to answer live chats for about the next 6 minutes before we round this thing out. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to John Smith, who says, why does Ukraine have to fight head on? And why aren't they allowed to attack north and head to Moscow?
Well, they're not barred from doing that. It's just that the Russians would probably nuke them at that point because that would be a threat to their national sovereignty, and that means that their defensive nuclear doctrine could be activated and they could use tactical nuclear weapons or just nuclear weapons in general against Ukraine. So they don't really want to do that. And on top of that, that would be Ukrainian blood spilled for land they would never gain back or get after the war. They would give it up for something else. So they'd much rather fight over the land that's theirs than land that would never be theirs. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Steve McKinnon, who says, what is the average age of fighters for Ukraine and or Russia currently? And I noticed Ukraine is requesting up to 60 years old for fighters.
Well, interestingly enough, from what we've heard, the average age of a Ukrainian soldier is somewhere in the range of 40 to 45. And the Russians are pretty much exactly the same. It's somewhere in like 43 to 48, but they're almost identical. So oddly enough, the average age of Ukrainian and Russian soldiers is actually well on up there compared to other wars. Like in World War II, the average age of a fighting soldier was something around like 19 or 18. And then the average fighting age in Vietnam was 19. No. Oh, wait a minute. I can hear a reverb. Oh, hello?
Yeah, I was trying to get my headphones fixed and it jumped to the computer.
Oh, I was like, oh my God, what's happening? But the average fighting age in Vietnam was 19. But overall, usually the fighting age is very young. It's almost close to the bare minimum allowed, which is around 18, 17 years old, depending on each nation. But still, in Ukraine and Russia, they're quite old. And so with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to George Ferguson, who says, I've seen a wave of Russia will win the war on YouTube. Do you think this will happen due to a lack of ammunition for Ukraine?
No, I don't think so. And also, the wave that's going on, I'll tell you this, y'all. Y'all wouldn't believe this. A lot of people love to parrot what they hear. A lot of people don't actually have original ideas. And funnily enough, a lot of YouTubers fall in that category. And a lot of them just repeat whatever they think is going to be in vogue. And you'll probably see that a lot of those die-hard Ukrainian supporters just get them, yippee! They're going to all turn into doom and gloom, Ukraine's losing the war, and it's over, people. Because that's what they're going to think is popular. And nobody really comes up with original thoughts of their own, so they just go with that. We don't do that on this channel. You know, I still think that the Ukrainians, in the worst case scenario at this point, they can probably negotiate a draw. And I don't think a defeat is in the future. A draw is the worst that can happen. A victory will still be possible. But beyond that, that's why you're seeing that wave. And I don't think it's going to be due to... I don't think Ukraine can be defeated due to a lack of ammunition or anything, because, you know, instead of going balls to the wall like they have been going, they can just, you know, dig in and conduct a defensive war. It will be in the Russians' court at that point, spending-wise, to try and hurry up and end the war. So they're going to continue to just slam their forces into endless defenses and wear their forces down and wear their economy down to the point that they can't fight longer. And then they'll have to go to the negotiating table. So to me, I don't think it's possible for them to lose. And, you know, and I'm going to be so honest with y'all. Yeah, I'm going to put money on this. Y'all will see. In about 6 months' time, at least over half of the people on YouTube who are covering the war in Ukraine are going to stop covering Ukraine and they're going to move on. Probably because, one, the viewership for most people, except for the Lead Spring Army, which is really the same it's always been, has rapidly been declining for most people. And they're not going to be seeing the AdSense that they like to have seen at the beginning of the war, and they're going to move on to other things. Probably some of them are going to move on to talking about stocks and portfolios. Some others are probably going to go on to talking about motorcycles. You know, they're all going to move on to different things because, funnily enough, a lot of them weren't around at the beginning of the war. They kind of popped in once they saw it was viral, and I have a feeling that that's probably going to be the case here in the next 6 months. We're probably going to be one of the only channels that still continues coverage about 6 months from now. I would bet at this point, because a lot of them are just in it to repeat what's being said and get AdSense. Like, that's the honest truth. We never were in it for that. I mean, hell, we didn't even get paid for about the first month that we did this. And even after that, it's been entirely on viewer generosity, which is the way I think it should be done. But a lot of people weren't into that mindset. And you can easily tell. But with that, hope that does address that the best I can. And I see some people, you know, talking about that in the chat. And I'm not going to say too much about it, you know, because it is what it is, you know, it will be what it is. But I always find it interesting when, you know, people who weren't here at the beginning of the war, we were here, at least for most people that I'm thinking of, 6-7 months before they ever showed up to cover the war in any real way. And you could even see that a lot of them only started to cover the war once their videos about Ukraine were getting more views than whatever else they were talking about. And that kind of shows me where the real purpose of covering the war for them lies. We covered it because I just cared. I didn't even care if it was going to get views. I didn't care if we were going to make a living off this at the beginning of the war. I just ran it because I wanted to. I wanted to cover the news of what was going on over there because I had a friend over there that I cared about. Others didn't do that. They only did it once it became viral and Google Trends showed that it was a trending topic for months on end. They're like, oh, it's a cash cow. That's when a lot of people hopped in. So with that, hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And we have one last question remaining in the spreadsheet. So would you like to do the thing?
And yes, and also to answer Rob Eisman's question, this is going to be the same last question. He said, are we doing a fundraiser Christmas Eve? Yes, the Christmas address this year is not going to have the fundraiser attached to it because we're still going to be conducting our Sunday fundraiser, which, you know, will just be a Christmas Eve fundraiser, which kind of serves for the Christmas fundraiser. You know, it's a 2-in-1 sort of thing. So yes, we will be doing it on Christmas Eve, and the Christmas address will not have a fundraiser attached to it. It will just be the address. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Keymaster, who says, do you think that Ukraine is holding back the Abrams until they get the F-16s for a spring or summer offensive?
I'm not really sure, because we do know that the Abrams are currently attached possibly to the 14th Kolotny Yar Brigade in the very northeastern part of the front. We haven't seen them in action yet on video, so it's possibly, it's possible, it's entirely possible that they're just not wanting to use them because they're scared of losing them at this point. They may be saving them for when they possibly get more equipment, or they may be saving them for rainy days, considering how support for Ukrainians to arrive, and then they're going to use them in conjunction with each other. They could be working on that. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank every single one of y'all so much once again for being here with us tonight and watching this news. If you did enjoy, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We put out this news every single day of the week, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering it as much as we possibly can. And of course, it means a lot to us to know that all of y'all were here with us tonight as we continue to cover the news. Of course, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the exact same news of the war in Ukraine on day 667. Take care, everyone, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Get some rest. Slava Ukraine. Heroem Slava. And, of course, good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Come on.